What do you got?
I think I can prove to a judge that both of these men had the mens rea.
What the hell is a mens rea?
It's a legal term the lawyers use. It just means the intention to commit a crime.
Okay, come on, let's go.
Mens rea?
Put the cuffs on him.
How could we have gotten mens rea? We take blood? Can you do it without taking blood? We both use condoms. How is this possible? I want to see a doctor. Can I have an independent blood test?
Money!
I feel sick.
What are you doing?
Mens rea! Oh! Oh! My God! No!
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, thank you so much for the wait. We are here. The wait has been worth it. We're not going to do a lot of housekeeping stuff because we're going to hit the ground running because I have so much to do, and I'm pretty sure, as usual, I'm not going to get around to actually discussing any of it because I tend to ramble and wander far afield. So we got to make sure we have enough rambling time here. Just real quick, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, do all that sort of stuff. We won't mention it much. And we also have our like and subscribe poll set up. Most of it is just stolen straight from Megan because that's how I roll. Let someone else do the thinking for me. The like and subscribe poll is just to make you remember to hit the like and hit the subscribe button. Vote over here. What is your favorite takeaway from the Maya Kowalski trial? The tuft of justice, dumpster Jesus, the seventh floor coven, or J Hatch getting stuck for over $200 million? Take your vote for which one of those is your favorite part of it. And we'll check back in an hour, see how things are going. But I am just so glad you are all here, and I'm so glad I finally have our guest on. That's all I want to do for the background. You all know the deals. Super chatting is not necessary. It's not required. It's not even encouraged. We're going to do all that on Friday on our big griftathon. But the surefire way to make sure your question for me or Mr. Anderson, whatever, the surefire way to do that is to send a super chat. Guaranteed it'll get seen, read, and addressed. Otherwise, I'll try to pick the stuff out of chat as I'm able. With that out of the way, I want to introduce someone who literally needs no introduction to anybody that's watching this, but we'll give him a quick little I guess, an introduction of some highlights.
As you can see, we've had our eye on you for some time now, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson. Oh, Mr. Anderson. 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 Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, that literally goes on for another minute. We're not gonna do that. We're just gonna bring him up right now. Mr. Anderson, hello. I'm sure that never gets old, and you've never heard that one before, have you?
No,
never.
I had an entire trial based on that, as you probably know, where the defense lawyer was named Mr. Smith, and it was during this time that the movies were out, and the jury had a freaking field day with it.
Oh no! Did it make its way into a judgment?
I don't know if it did or not. It was not like this one where everything made its way into the judgment, but
those are always the great judgments where the judge has a little bit of sense of humor and plays with those things.
Oh, she loved it. She absolutely loved it, and then she would announce it as Mr. Anderson, and
nice.
And Mr. Smith. Kevin Smith was the defense counsel there, and he didn't get quite as big of an introduction, but the jury loved the whole idea of Mr. Smith versus Mr. Anderson. I just like the part about being Keanu Reeves and being the good guy. That was great.
Yeah. Well, I'm just glad to finally have someone on the show that knows how to properly pronounce Vordire. That's all. I'm just glad. They're not mythical creatures that know how to properly pronounce that.
So. True. Depends. I think it's geographically oriented, isn't it? You're voir dire in some parts of the country, and you're voir dire in some other parts of the country.
We're all about voir dire in Utah, so
right.
Out there in God's country where people know how to talk.
Yes.
And again, I wanted to have you on earlier, but you seem to be busy doing a lot of things recently, so I thought we'd wait till things settle down.
Yeah. which I'd been on earlier.
And Megan was on yesterday, and right in the middle of this, I'd be like, okay, well, I'm just excited to have a nice chill conversation with him. And then all of a sudden the orders come out and your dance card is full. And so I appreciate you getting up early especially after your late night last night.
Oh gosh, 3.5 hours. Can't believe it. And then we stayed on after the audience was off for
no
hour talking about stuff. It was about 1 a.m. when I hit the rack. My wife's sleep.
Well, see, I was planning on just doing a chill, relaxing thing, but we can't ignore the big elephants and the big gorillas in the room here, which are the orders that came out yesterday.
Yeah.
I heard your story on Rob. How that was right about the time it's 11:30 p.m. here in Korea, and I was in the middle of the office, and I actually had some of that work you have to really focus on to do.
Oh yeah.
So I that's about the time I checked out. It was right there at the beginning when you were just mentioning that you woke up, you were doing things, and the orders started coming in. How much of it did you know beforehand? I mean, there was a lot of it that was kind of telegraphed.
He seemed to state every opportunity when he was getting orders out or making decisions. Now, I'm not sure what these orders are going to say, or, depending on which way I go, or, of course, if I rule against the plaintiffs or in favor of the defendants, then none of this. He said that, it's legal speak. And if you've heard that enough, he is telegraphing that he's probably going to rule in our favor, but he never wants anybody to think that he's not, as he says, calling balls and strikes. So the more he emphasized that there was an issue there, the more I read that he was likely to go with us. And
that's the thing, though. And a lot of times, the clients have problems. I mean, I would assume you knew it was pretty much a slam dunk, because we all knew it was a slam dunk, and you're way deeper into this than we are. But it's like I always tell my clients, like, I don't think they have a case, but judges are strange creatures, and you can't say 100% this is going to go our way, but you rest easy. So yeah.
Yeah, you never get cocky, and I'm still not cocky. I mean, I've had enough weird stuff happen in my career at the appellate level that until that check clears into our account, I don't ever start trying to spend it in my mind. That's for sure.
In the recent weeks, we've had the hearings, we've had the whole juror number 1 thing. What's been the big thing as far as event wise in the past couple of weeks? Like the one that just said, "All right, I'm glad this happened. Now I'm glad it's over."
I was a little tense, not much, but a little tense before juror 1, Paul's testimony. I had complete and utter confidence in him, but Judge Carroll had a habit as the trial progressed in ordering something to be very, very narrow and specific. But then when the defense started to complain, he would expand it. And I was very concerned as we approached the juror interview that he would let them. I knew what they wanted to do was to just get a finger hold on some issue enough so they could do the thing, which is to completely and utterly destroy him and Yolanda with endless subpoenas to everyone he's ever known, every place he's ever worked, every contact he's ever made, pull every record going back to his first grade transcript.
Capable of better and or more work. What does this mean, huh?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Disruptive in class. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Doesn't play well with others, you don't say. Yeah.
And I was concerned that the court might let them open it up, and Paul might have a slip up on even one answer to give them that finger hold, and then we would be off to the races. And that was probably once Paul started answering the questions, I thought, you know what, he's got this in the bag. Paul's smart, and he's a good man, I don't think.
Well, I would assume that's not his first time on the stand, being a retired law enforcement officer. So
no, that's
always good.
Right. It's really not. He is, he's poised. He makes a great impression. He's got a lot of personality, as everybody's seen, and a lot to say. But he handled that perfectly by just yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full, sir.
Oh well, we're off to a good question here in chat. We got 2 good questions from Mathis. One, this is interesting stuff in the past, like the motion hearing on the omnibus and limiting motion. Can you share transcripts of all that good stuff? Why don't you explain how the transcripts work and how much those suckers cost?
Yeah. So, okay, the 2 parts to this question. The first part is how much they cost and what the procedures are. And the second part is what my plans are. The first part is, especially in big court reporters are not, they're part of companies and they're there to make a profit, and they're not immune from the obvious facts that this is a gigantic amount of money, and why would we care if they quadrupled their rate? I'm not saying a lot of them do it, but certainly the rates that we had were top of the line. And so you're talking about $2 and $3 a page. And when you're getting into hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of pages, you can see, I mean, we probably have $25,000 in transcription costs and running, probably much more than that.
You don't get transcripts unless you absolutely need them, because no joke, you'll see on the bill X number of staples used. They will bill you for everything.
Ink in the printer, everything. And the saving grace for a lot, in a lot of it, was that the defense was getting dailies. And so the viewers know there are feeds that you can get and buy off of the actual court reporter in the courtroom, and the machine there, their computer, they take it down on the machine, the transcription machine, the little thing they type on, it goes to their computer sitting right there. And then there's a program in there that transcribes that stuff. And then there's a feed, and it's what we call a dirty ASCII, ACII, ASCII. Yeah. We call it, and it's not proofed by the court reporter, but it's pretty darn accurate. You'll get misspellings of names, but for the most part, it's pretty accurate. And so the defense, I think, was getting a live stream, and then I don't think that they let you print off that live stream because, well, it cuts into the profit a lot. But then they were ordering some dailies too as things came in. The sum total of that is that where we absolutely needed it, we would order a transcript. But for the most part, as plaintiffs, knowing as I did that there was a pretty good shot we were going to win quite a few of these causes of action, I'm not about preserving the record. I don't care.
Well, you did have to get the transcripts for the juror number 1 issues because the defense didn't. You had to do their damn job for them.
Well, that's right, and I did, and that's cost a pretty penny. So the answer to the question is, I have, between the defense ordering them and me getting copies, and on the few times that we actually ask for a daily or a transcript of a hearing, I've got a stack of them 5 feet high. Now, what I had planned to do with the Kowalski's approval, and there's nothing final about this by any means, there's all kinds of releases and paperwork to do, but along with the books, we're going to try to set up a website where we upload everything.
Oh, wow.
Except the attorney-client privilege stuff, where at one stop, the public can pull down whatever. They can already do it if you know how to do it and you're authorized to do it off of the 12th Circuit docket. But we're going to try to make it easier downloading it ourselves and making it available for download. And every deposition transcript, every hearing transcript, everything that ever got filed, and then hopefully some things like, if we can find the man-woman power to do it, even uploading things like answers to interrogatories and stuff that doesn't always get filed. And our part of that, I think, will be in support of our motion for attorney fees and or sanctions. But what we really, really want is for the public to see line by line what went on in this case, and to see some of the absolutely horrific behavior that was going on behind the scenes.
Oh, behind the scenes stuff. Yeah.
Everyone.
I thought the stuff we saw in open court was pretty horrific at times.
It was. I can't believe they said this stuff to the court. And I keep saying, I don't know if you were there monitoring at the time, but when Chris Altenburn lost it in front of the judge with that whole, you don't care about the law, you don't know the law,
that
whole thing. I was standing right there next to him at counsel's table, the counsel's table right next to him. And I said out loud, I turned to him and I said, Chris, that's completely out of line. That's completely inappropriate. And
he shouldn't have to be told all people.
Of course, the former chief judge of the Second District Court of Appeals, give me a break. And it was a sign of their frustration. But I don't care how frustrated you are. You don't yell at the judge, especially somebody who's put in the time and effort that Hunter Carroll put in. And I don't care who the judge is. You don't in open court, especially on live TV, start yelling at the judge about such things. It's completely and utterly inappropriate. The thing I'm mad about is, like I said, Judge Carroll, I'm definitely not Hunter Carroll's kind of guy. We're polar opposites in personality and in approach, but I'm an officer of the court, and I find it incredibly undignified and negative to the whole profession for stuff like that, for the public to see stuff like that. But it didn't come out in any of the transcripts. I kept hoping like you or one of the other folks would pick it up somewhere on the feed, but I wouldn't have done it. So, yeah.
Hey, Hippo Lover, good to see you here. Thank you so much for the $10 super sticker. Take a deep breath and relax. You're out of it for the time being. Can we donate memes? Megan's got her local, so I guess I guess if Megan's up for it and you have some particularly interesting and funny memes, you can send them to Megan, and Megan can tweet them to me.
I love them. And to all those folks out there that were donating them, they kept me going at times. We'd have some really shitty days, and I'd come home, and Megan or Robert, one of y'all, would send me one of these memes, and it would just crack me up, and that would revitalize my willingness to work a little harder. So thank you.
Well, that's good. And you have fans. Starkey Sorja here says, can you just sit here and fangirl over Greg? And Mathis has another thing. Your Shades of a Civil Action. Thank you so much again for the super chat. Funding and My Cousin Vinny, lawyer-judge relationship were in this trial. Any other good lawyer movies to recommend? Well, first, how many times after hearing the defense present their arguments did you just feel the urge to?
Everything that guy just says bullshit. Thank you.
Love that. That was one of my favorites. Yeah, I loved My Cousin Vinny.
Cross your mind at any time in the trial?
He does the cross-examination. He goes, I'm done with that guy. And I really wanted to say that. I think it was Mark Anderson, that expert, a hospital administrator expert, towards the end, or one of their experts. I really wanted to say that at the end. The cross went really well, and I really want to turn to the jury and go, and I'm done with that guy. Lawyer movies. I'll tell you the one that motivated me, really got me most committed to what I do. It's probably caused me to make some bad decisions here and there on case selection. But there's a movie out of the early 80s, maybe late 70s, but I think the early 80s, called The Verdict with Paul Newman. And if you didn't know that, it's dated with the cars and, the tech and all that, but it's a story of a medical malpractice case, and it's a down and out attorney who used to be great and then had some terrible things happen to him. And, mostly by his own faults and personal deficiencies. But he comes back, and in one case that nobody else will take, for a family that had no resources, he took the case, and and his closing, while to people like you and I was pretty standard to your average person, particularly back then, was wonderful, and the critics went crazy over it. But the I'll never give up type of mentality of the character there. What was his name? Paul Gauguin or something? Yeah, good Irish name, and his willingness to like. The story revolves around a medical malpractice case in which a mom during childbirth throws up in her mask and suffocates and dies. And so then the only people left are her sister and her brother-in-law. And so they're pursuing this for the baby. And but she's not there to testify for herself, obviously. And then you've got it was who is that great actor with a mellifluous voice, who's James God, you know him from the 70s and 80s.
It's in The Verdict. James Handy.
Was it Handy or no? James, was it Mason?
Oh, James Mason. James Mason was in it too. Yeah, it was James Mason.
Right.
Yeah, he played Ed.
Well, no, I wanted the guy that was a chief defense counsel, you know. And you know, there's some mildly racist stuff in there, like let's make sure we have a black person sitting at our table because one of the jurors is black. And but the fact that he would go and find and track down the nurse who never wanted to be heard from again, and she happened to have kept a copy of the post-operative report, the true one, and where that they had, no pun intended, doctored up the actual the one in the medical records had been altered to say that she hadn't eaten for 12 hours, 24 hours. In fact, she said, and this nurse was there, I had a full breakfast 3 hours ago. And so, you know, big thing with anesthesia is you don't want to have somebody with a full stomach. And then she, you know, then there's the ultimate scene in the courtroom where she not confesses, but she testifies. She walks in first, and that freaking the defense is losing it. And then from there, that she says, and I kept a copy, and I think it's James Mason. He jumps up and objection, and then best evidence rule, and they exclude it, but the jury's heard it. And they had just enough of of testimony from an expert to give them the verdict. And, you know, I remember I was about 22, 21 at the time. I think I was a senior in college. My girlfriend at the time, and I went to see it. And I think I cried in that movie. And I think that's really where I got this idea that this was something that needed to be done, and maybe I could be good at. You know, that was a big thing. And so I love that one. There's a bunch of courtroom dramas that have gone on since that time.
For me, it was To Kill a Mockingbird. I saw To Kill a Mockingbird when I was young with Gregory Peck, and that's
of course. I loved it. I've always been a huge fan of that. And in fact, my mom told me once that I am named after Gregory Peck because that movie came out. I was born in 1959, a long time ago. And I think that movie came out in 58 or 59. I'm not sure. But he had a great movie out around the time I was born. And I think that was an influence in me being a Gregory. That's a heretofore unknown fact, but my mom told me one time that Gregory Peck was an influence on her wanting to name me Gregory. And again, somebody's going to date that movie, and it's going to be after. But
it's 1957. I just checked.
What was it?
1957.
Then that's it. And that's a fun fact about me, is that I was actually named after Atticus Finch's the actor for Atticus Finch. And
the other movie that I mean, it's not even really a courtroom movie, but one that kind of had a big impact on me that I even watched on the plane from Korea to the States last summer, and it holds up today. The original 12 Angry Men.
Yeah, God, you gotta love that.
Yeah, and you know, just these old movies.
Yeah. Well, here's the interesting thing about it. If you're going to be a trial attorney, you need to be a student of trial. And you need to watch these kind of things. And I read everything, no matter how horrific. F. Lee Bailey wrote, The Defense Never Rests. All that crap.
It's right over there on the bookshelf.
Yep. And Jerry Spence's books. And, everyone I could find, I read to just figure out how to do it. And those movies.
Yeah, from Utah, we live 3-4 miles from Jackson Hole. So Jerry Spence was the hero growing up.
Oh God, yes, yeah.
He's a great guy, and that's just him. There is no performance to him. He just is a living performance. I did a stream about this, like my favorite lawyers, who I think Barry Scheck's cross-examination of Dennis Fung in the O.J. Simpson trial was one of the greatest cross-examinations you'll ever see. Where he dismantled him for 8.5 days on the stand and had him so discombobulated he got off the stand and hugged the entire defense team. That's when you've got the state's witness. So Barry Scheck's cross-examination I think is excellent. F. Lee Bailey and Jerry Spence, and then you have to go back to Clarence Darrow for the original OG. But they don't make orators like that anymore. The Clarence Darrows, the Jerry Spence. Jerry Spence is 93 now, and he's still involved in a current lawsuit. They don't build people like that anymore.
It's interesting, the history of it. And as you and I know, to be a trial attorney, you really need to be a historian as well. And it used to be one of the reasons that these old school courthouses built in the 1800s and even early 1900s were so huge was that it was the entertainment in town if there was a big trial. And the entire freaking town would show up. And that's why you had these gigantic courtrooms that could seat 500 people, 300 people and you were expected as a trial attorney back then to be extremely entertaining, and your closings could go on for days, and you would be quoting the Bible and the Constitution, and you would be going through every bit of the evidence, but you were expected to put it on in such a way that it was entertaining, not only to the jury, but to the gallery. That was a really big part of your practice. Was you were like the late night talk show host, stand-up comedian and social commentator for your city or town or whatever. And
like you said, I think it was what Clarence Darrow's Leopold and Loeb closing, I think it was 12 hours long.
Yeah, exactly. And people, but people were rapt. They were they were very lyrical and literary, and so erudite, so well put together and crafted. And a lot of times, most of the time, I think, they would stray far beyond anything having to do with the actual trial and the evidence. And they would get into politics, and they would get into current events, and they would get into even some gossip in the community and a bunch of shit that right now that we would just never, ever be allowed to talk about. But back then, you had to fill up 12 hours and keep those people amused for a few days. And I wish I had some transcripts. They didn't really have transcripts, but
there is a book, I don't know if you've read it, called it's something like the greatest closing arguments in history or something.
Yes. I've got a copy now. All right, here's my bitch session. I've had a lot of associates over the past, let's see, how long have I had my own practice? I've been practicing 40 years, so 34 years. And a lot of great people came and went through Anderson law offices, then Anderson, St. Denis and Glenn, and then Anderson Glenn. But somehow my very best books with all my annotations and notes and dog ears and sticky notes sticking out the side have seemed to disappear over the years. And at some point I'm going to put out an APB and
offer rewards.
The town search their library for all my old books. That one is one. And then there were Secrets of the Greatest Trial Practitioners. I don't know if you ever saw that one.
No,
it was by one of the big legal publishers. It was about that thick. It was like a textbook size thing. It had Spence and then Stanley Prizer, and it had going back to Darrow and all of these folks, and it had their closing, sometimes their opening, sometimes a cross. And then the great thing about it was annotated with the lawyer coming back.
Oh wow.
And annotating why they did it. and what the goal was for this phrase or that phrase. Brilliant book. I've tried to get it on innumerable occasions. I've searched Google. I've searched all the old antique and rare bookstores. I haven't been able to find it yet. But
what's it called again? Secrets
of the Great Trial Practitioners.
Oh, the great. Time to write this down here. Great trial practitioners.
Yeah. If anybody ever hears about that, and if anybody ever finds one with my cryptic writing on the margin, it's always in blue ink and plenty of stickies sticking out the side and little paragraph things saying, I really need to use this in such and such a case.
Well, talking about these, that kind of raises the question I have for you. I mean, at the beginning of this 9-10 week slog, you were butting heads with the judge a bit, and Megan was all up in arms. You know, what's he doing? Why is he? And just wait, but you know, Anderson needs to do this, and Megan, just trust me on this. Watch. And I mean, at what point did you figure out Judge Carroll and go, okay, this is what I need to adjust to chill him a bit? Is there something you can point to?
Point to, you know, this relationship had been going on for 3.5 years, 4 years. And as I said last night in Rob's show, and I think I said before in Megan's show, if you go back and watch the trial, the video, and you watch, there's some few cuts to his face when I'm arguing. And it looks like it's physically uncomfortable for him to hear my voice. I'm not kidding. Go back. I'm sure some of the followers here, some of the audience is going to go find these things, because he does this. His jaw starts moving sideways, and then you see him kind of go down in this sort of closed eyes, like I cannot take it. Look, and so Jennifer, my beautiful, talented wife, of course, spotted it instantly, and she said, Greg, you need to just get up there, just stick to the facts and shut the F up, because 90% of the time, first, you talk too damn much to begin with, but the other thing is, he's really, really intelligent, and he's got about 90% of what you're going to say already figured out. And she also pointed out that probably means he's in your court to a certain extent. Mm. So don't argue your way out of success. And I started to listen to her about the things, and I started to judge the court. And I think that after he yelled at me the second time, and I don't know if I actually caused him to have one of his 5-minute go in the back and beat up grass moments, from Guardians of the Galaxy. You're making me grass. And I think that's what he's done. He's got some turf out there in the back. Yeah. Just going to stick the shit out of the grass for a while. I think.
But I will give him the credit for doing that. Too many judges will just go off at the lawyers in court. I respect the judges that can go, okay, I have the problem. I need to excuse myself for a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give him points for that.
I give myself points for the fact that I think I only made him do it once, and I think Howie and company made him do it like 3 times that I counted. But after the first one with me, where I was just irritating the hell out of him with some argument, I finally realized that there were 2 things I needed to do. First, let Nick argue a lot more of the legal stuff, because his approach is much more attuned. I mean, Harvard Law School, the court had respect for Nick's intellect, as everyone does. And Nick's approach of systematically building his argument piece by piece is so much more to the liking of the court than my scattershot, creative but disorganized mind. And so basically the point was when after the second or third time he really got on me, I clicked that, you're never going to win this judge over the way you have. You know what? I can't even say that. I have traditionally felt as though in most trials, plaintiff or defense, that the judge has become an additional opposing counsel. It's happened in so many cases where, and this is the scenario. I'll go into a trial. I will do what I'm doing. The lawyer on the other side, who was absolutely sure they were just the greatest thing since sliced bread, but I looked at their CV and I'd done the mental math about how many trials they really had. And they'd start screwing stuff up and they'd miss things and they'd drop the ball on points. They'd fail to pick up on things that my people were saying they could have crucified me with. And as a result, the judge, I noticed, would start to come in and more or less rescue them.
Ooh, yeah.
Make it a level playing field, to try to level it out more. And Jennifer's a connoisseur of this, and also my partner John Glenn. If you could ever get him on, he can tell you a lot of stories about this, where I felt like I had to argue, like I was never going to get anything out of the trial court to help me. So I had to find ways not only to outwit the other side, but outwit the trial court to get what I wanted. Because if I approached it straight away on a legal point or a factual argument, I knew I was just going to get thrown right back in my face. So I developed the art of getting around smart judges and trying to get not telegraph my punch at all about where I was going on things, because I time and time again, the judge ended up being part of the other opposition.
See, and I could see that. And that's why I was telling people, just wait, see where he's going with it. Because I could see that, because that's sort of how my brain works. I call it the Columbo brain.
Yeah.
Where you come a little bit over here, then you go a little bit over here, then you go a little bit more over here, then you cut around the back. And that's when the person finally realizes they're surrounded by a net. And then there's just one more question.
Exactly.
And I felt like you were doing that, to where you would ask that one last question and that would pull all of the pieces in together. And by then the guy says, well, yes. And then he goes, oh shit, I was supposed to say no, but I just said yes. Right.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal, to lay that trap and cut off all means.
You've been doing this a minute or two, you wouldn't be where you were if you weren't that smart.
Okay. Hold on. Okay, it's perfect. Thank you. Okay, I got it.
So in 2 hours.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, I actually had life going on for a moment.
No worries.
Life out of sight of this. Yeah. So here's some. I've always ended up at the end of trial. A couple things have happened. Whether it's at the end of the trial or in post-trial stuff, I've always had judges begrudgingly, in most instances, say something just among counsel or privately to the effect of, Mr. Anderson, you tried a good case, or something vaguely complimentary, but from the heart. And I've also, until this trial, I can count on one hand I've lost track of how many hundred, but I've always shaken hands with the opposition. And whatever the outcome was, no matter how angry they were, I was able to establish some level of professionalism of, you fought the good fight. And I always go over to the other side and let them know that, no matter how much I might despise some of their tactics or some of the things that happened. And this case, that did not happen. And that is incredibly unfortunate. And
they didn't reciprocate, or you just didn't want to do it?
They didn't want to do it. They didn't want to reciprocate, and they didn't want to be anywhere near me. And, you know, Ethan got up before the end of the verdict even was read and stormed out of the courtroom with those comments. I mean, I could not believe it. Calling the Kowalski slime balls and the jurors, the jury idiots. And we could hear him, you know. We could hear him as he busted through those two doors. Everybody in the courtroom heard him. You don't do that.
That's just immaturity. You know, that's sad.
It is. It's emotion taking over, but you got to be a pro, you know. And the other thing that happened at the end there, I know I'm rambling on this point, but something that's pissed me off. I never really got a good photo of me and Maya right around the time of the verdict. Nick got about half a dozen. One of them that's become iconic with him holding her. All the papers, everybody's got that. It's been posted up everywhere. And then even my friend and expert Scott Richards has got a great photo with them all kind of huddled and hugging. Everybody got a photo with Maya and the Kowalskis except me. And hang on, I gotta do something about this thing. Keeps dinging.
Another lawyer gets his wings.
Yeah, and so in any event, I was trying to figure out how this all happened. How the hell did I get left out of everything? But what happened was I did what I do and what you're supposed to do if you're a pro, which is once the verdict was read, there's always a tiny bit of confusion. The defense always gets that instruction read that there shall be no reaction. You know, how can there not be a reaction to something like this? Yeah. But I always go up, and after the jury is discharged, I go to the very end, and I can't really say too much on the jury, but I can at least mouth thank you or something, or nod or catch their eyes, something to let them know that I am acknowledging just how much they did and just how much I'm appreciative of it. And then I go, and I couldn't obviously talk to the court, but I could at least walk by Judge Carroll and nod and smile and mouth a thank you. And then, of course, he said, I can't talk to you right now. But I saw in his eyes that he appreciated the fact that, you know, typical Judge Carroll. I saw in his eyes, you know, that he at least appreciated I came over and acknowledged it. He didn't need it, but it's the right thing to do. And then I went over and I thanked our judicial clerks, both of them who did a magnificent job. And I even went over to Nick, who was the bailiff and who I loved and ran the courtroom really well. And I went over and shook his hand and said, thank you. Job well done. And by the time I got finished doing what you're supposed to do as a pro around the courtroom, I came back and everybody, the herd, had sort of made its way out of the courtroom. So I never got the iconic photos from with Maya or anything, but you got to do what you do first.
You've got 9.5 weeks of testimony and trial forever on the web to go to. So can't put the video in a frame, but you know you're still there. And that's one thing I want to talk about here in a minute. I want to get some of these super chats. Then I want to talk to you about one specific thing here. Ruby, the $10 super chat. Thank you so much for the support. It says saw a footnote from a filing in which you called to the court's attention Sally having revealed the terms of her settlement on a podcast. Anything more to say about that, or any consequences for her?
It took the New Yorker magazine about a day to figure out how much that settlement was, and we were getting followed. I forget the name of the who was the writer? She's a brilliant writer. She did a really nice job on telling the story about halfway through. And it only took her a little while to get that out of somebody, not us, but somebody on the defense, I think. And so once it was out as a matter of public record, we're still not supposed to talk about it. But if anybody brought any action or tried to impose sanctions or anything, you're basically looking at it, and the judge is looking at it going, everybody knows what it is already. Where are your damages here? You may not have done the right thing by revealing it, but there's no damages. So nobody really cared at that point. I'm just surprised that Sally Smith ever went on a chat. I don't know that she did, but
people can find out the results of these. Somebody's going to talk at some point, unless it's a really tight-lipped person, and she doesn't seem to strike me as one of the quiet types.
No, that's fair.
One thing that I did 2 days ago that I hadn't done yet, I watched the Netflix documentary 2 days ago. I just couldn't watch it.
Yeah.
The reality was heavy enough, and boy, she came off as somehow worse in the documentary than she was on the stand. That was kind of scary.
It is possible. She's an odd character,
but after all of this, she is still listed as a staff member on their website. I can't even begin to wrap my mind around that.
And the state still hasn't done anything. And I was saying, I've had personal meetings now with the governor on 2 occasions about this stuff, and I really like our governor. I'm not. I leave the politics out of it. I'm neither for or against anything like that, but she shouldn't be practicing medicine. She damn sure shouldn't be testifying in court. And that whole
or someone who's been arrested for child abuse might not want to be around children. Just saying.
I mean, seriously. I thought it was ludicrous that she was still working there. I think the jury, I think there's actually some juror questions about that, aren't there? Like if you go through those, whatever many, 250 juror questions they ask, I think Paul asked 209, juror number 1. And there's a bunch more after around that. But I think somebody actually asked about that. Is Sally Smith still working at Johns Hopkins? And I think they were astounded. You have to ask the jurors themselves, but I think they were astounded by the fact that why is this Sally Smith person still involved in anything? You'd
think somewhere in HR or the legal crew at some point would go, this seems to be a liability waiting to happen. You think someone would do someone is gonna well, this is gonna happen at some point.
Well, yeah, she's gonna pull one of these things one too many times. This is what happens with unbridled power. This is what happens when you cut bureaucrats loose to do whatever the hell they want and succumb to their more base instincts. And you eventually get a Kowalski situation where they just go so far that they absolutely drive people over the wall, and it just comes back, and then there's a huge scene because governments are really good at creating problems and then creating more problems trying to solve the problems they originally created. And I think the whole Sally Smith and Chapter 39 child abuse scenario is an example of exactly that. And when the Second District Court of Appeals comes out and says, you know what, we can't trust your testimony alone. We know you're a doctor. We know you're a board certified abuse doctor, but we've looked at your record, honey, and we just really can't trust anything you say. And which was the translation of what that opinion said. And when you've got that going on out there, why would you possibly still want to have her out there representing you at the state level or at Johns Hopkins or anything else? But again, maybe this gets back to the whole they just don't get it, right?
Well, and that was the one thing that in your motion you kept repeating. That I like that tagline at the end of every paragraph. They still don't get it. And I thought that was incredible. And well, Brittany gets it. Brittany Schober says, "Thank you, Greg, for caring so much and for taking the time to speak to us. You are all the greatest teammate of lawyers. Lawyers is couldn't agree more." We're going to talk about that here in just a quick minute. And Mama Rose, been a member for 3 months, says, "Thank you for defending Maya, Greg. We're getting all the fresh snow up here. I'm sure Sandpoint is covered now."
Finally, we got 1 inch. I don't know where it was, where you were, but we got 1 inch on Christmas Day, and Annalise and Grayson ran out and they built this snowman, which was literally like this tall, out of 1 inch of snow.
Dirt and leaves rolled up in it. Yeah.
One of the ugliest snowmen I've ever seen. Of course, I didn't tell them that, but then of course we leave, and 3 days later they get, I don't know, 2 feet. The kids are going nuts. They're like, "Hey, can we go back? I'm a Florida boy. I'm not sure I'm interested in -13 right now."
Yeah, I went back to Utah with my son. Well, now he's 23 and living in the States, but we'd been here in Korea and he'd never seen a real American snowy Christmas in the Rockies. So I took him back to Utah when he was 8 or 10. And the first 4 days of my 2-week vacation were spent in a blizzard, tucked up inside the house, couldn't go anywhere, had to go out and shovel snow off the roof every 2 hours so it didn't collapse. I go, oh, yeah, this is why I hate snow. I remember now.
If you grew up with it, yeah. You shovel enough driveways and you won't. How did you get to Korea? I really don't know the whole legal vices backstory.
Oh, wow. The origin story. As quickly as I can put it, being from Utah, I was raised a good little Mormon boy, and I got the opportunity to do 2 years of missionary service here in Korea. And while I was here, I met a lawyer that was doing it. I'm like, hey, that's what I want to do. I'm planning on going to law school. And he said, well, you keep in touch. And so then I went back after 2 years. It was like I was here from 88 to 90. And then I went back to Utah State University, did my second year there. In the middle of my second year, my advisor said, hey, we just created a sister, and I was here in Busan when I was a missionary. We just created a sister school relationship with Busan National University. Do we know anybody that could possibly want to go be a guinea pig in that program? And my advisor said, hey, I think I know somebody that would do that. So I came back here for another year and a half or so. And then I went back while I was studying for the LSAT. And then I went back and finished up my final year of university, took the LSAT, went to University of Utah Law School, came here this is me rambling now. I did other things. In University of Utah, we weren't allowed to actually do anything as far as work-wise during our first year. And then
that's not a bad rule.
Yeah, during our second year, I came back here because the guy was like, hey, I kept in touch with him and said, hey, I want to do a clerkship with you. He's like, oh yeah, that'll be great. We'd love to have you at the firm here in Korea. Come on over. And I show up, and he was on vacation. So I'll be on vacation, but I'll be back soon after you get there. I show up in the office. I'm like, okay, I'm here. And the managing partner says, and who are you?
Nice.
I said, I'm the clerk.
I'm the new guy.
Yeah, he's like, the what? And I said, well, he told me you're going to. He's like, well, it's not his firm, is it? We don't need you. So
oh my God.
I came from Utah to Korea for the summer. I've got my return flight is in 3 months. What do I do? He's like, well, I don't know. I know a guy up the street. Maybe he needs somebody. And the guy said, yeah, we'll take him. So I clerked for him for a month and a half, came back, did my 3L. And about halfway, I wanted to get into the public defender's office in Salt Lake. So that's where I did my third year practice stuff. And the internship was at the public defender's office. But then in January, he called and said, hey, do you want to work for us after you graduate? Okay, sure. I guess I can stop looking for jobs now. So he hired me, and I've been here for 28 years now at the same firm. So just back here in Busan.
And you like Korea that much to stay over there?
Well, I've been here twice as long as I lived in the States. Well, essentially now. So it's just kind of home. It's home's where you hang your hat. But I figure when retirement rolls around, I'll head back to Utah. Be like the bear, just go back to the cave to die. Just go home and spawn upstream one more time.
Plenty of life left. Well, it's I've never been there. It's on the list to do Asia, and if I ever do, I'm calling you for directions on how to get around there.
Oh, absolutely.
Not very good.
It's you're welcome. That's the open policy. Anybody that finds their way here to Busan gets free drinks on me. So.
Oh, excellent. I'll be right there.
Bootyberry says, what was your reaction to the Reddit minion investigation on the slimy moves like digging up homecoming pics? Also, the Salisbury mic drop response.
Well, Deborah's a force of nature, and she's wonderful, and she knows how to nail it. The lady's got an intellect on her. The Reddit stuff was a bit scary, not for me because I'm used to it, but for outside folks and the Kowalskis and our witnesses and jurors in particular. Now, folks that didn't grow up with it, anybody over the age of about certainly 50 and probably 40 and maybe 35 now, that didn't grow up with the social media stuff, that it can be really, really scary. But even if you're younger and maybe knowing about social media makes it even more scary, that people can find out that kind of stuff about you. We used to brag about it when we were in my first firms, that we could find out anything about anyone, but that took private investigators and that took lots of phone calls and lots of interviews and a lot of digging through records. And now it's simply knowing how to hack something or dig in electronically, and then you've got all this history on somebody. And what they did to Paul and Yolanda is just horrifying. I don't know where their heads are at. I don't know where all that anger comes from and all of the dissident just to be contrarian, I guess is the best way to put it. But they just ignored the facts and went after anything possible. And I think a lot of it is simply contrarian. I think that it's fun to be on the other side of where everybody else is.
Well, it's fun to play the villain, but to actually be the villain, it's a.
You can't hurt people doing that. You're not allowed to do that. You can express whatever opinion you want. It's a free country. What's the phrase? I might totally disagree with what you're saying, but I'll die fighting to protect your right to say it. And I do believe that. I just don't believe.
I always like what's his face, the Mark Twain quote. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but something like we have these three precious truths: the freedom of consciousness, the freedom of speech, and the good sense to never use them. And I think that's. We'll talk about them in just a quick second here. Nicholas Starro says, smelling your finger means you miss your wife. I have no idea what that means, Nicholas, but thanks for the 15 krona. Thanks for the super chat, Nick. Boosh, thank you for being the newest member.
That's very helpful.
Take note. And Boosh, thank you so much.
My finger right there.
Yeah. I'm back, baby. We love Greg Anderson and what he's done. I don't know what that means, but thanks. And Manders 13, was the IJ ever produced? Can they be compelled to do so after the fact? And are you still going after sanctions? You got 15 days to 14 now to work out sanctions.
Yeah, that's a big question. So the answer to your question is no, we don't have the IJ. The next question is why not? Well, because the court said after directly ordering them to produce it, having them produce it, quote, produce it, then not produce it while they actually produced it, then take it home and claim they couldn't find it anymore, then file about a zillion objections on a privilege log to virtually everything in there and create a whole new battle. That's where we stand. And we voiced our objection and disbelief, but the court's order came back that said that what difference does it make now? You just knocked it out. He didn't say you knocked it out of the park, but essentially you won. Why are we still flailing at this? And my point was and is that we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know what's ultimately going to happen. And these people on the other side have a notorious reputation for losing things, quote.
Yeah. How many documents and devices were lost in this case?
Exactly. You can't lose 13 different cell phones and have how many of them? 3 or 4 or something drowned. And the other ways that they died, it was like
yeah, my son figured out you get one freebie, and then it's your allowance for the next 6 years to pay for a replacement phone.
it was like 50 million ways to die in the West, you know. It became a comedy show of, well, how did you lose this one? I was
hurricane
on an airplane, and you know, it dropped from 50,000 feet, and
my favorite is the hurricane ate my brief, or whatever it was. The hurricane.
Oh yeah, the guy, their psychologist who lost all of his records because he had them in a cardboard box in the garage, and then a hurricane came through. Yeah. Who keeps their freaking confidential psychological records of people in a box, a cardboard box in the garage?
In the garage. I mean, well, Dale says, Greg, I'm curious.
The greatest thing about a jury is a judge is paid to keep a straight face for this horseshit, but a jury is not. And they don't care if you happen to be on the Judicial Selection Committee 4 years ago, or you're on the Board of Governors coming up, or anything about that. All they know is you're giving a completely bullshit, unbelievably untrue answered response, and then they just turn you off. They go,
"Well, yeah,
I don't care if you told me the grass is green, the sky is blue. I'm not believing you because I can't believe a word you say." And that's what happened with them.
Well, that's the thing is we talk about the ring of truth, and truth has a certain ring, but it does. We're humans, or we're essentially animals at the end of the day. We have our own instincts and our own. We know when people are bullshitting us.
Pack animals. We're pack animals. We're tribal. We're used to reading. The only way that we got along was being able to read the reaction of our pack mates, the rest of our tribe, to our actions and so forth. You know, and the reactions that you got, the reinforcement of behavior and the discouragement of other behavior. And so we have an inherent ability to spot BS, because if we didn't, we'd all be extinct right now.
Yeah.
Org, go over there. That mammoth won't harm you a little bit. Stick him in the chest with your spear. Don't worry, it won't harm you. I'm not going to go over there, says Org, because I know you're BSing me, and mammoth is going to squash me like a bug. You know, no, really, Org, you're going to do really well against that mammoth. That's my point.
Yeah. And we. By the way, if you hear snorting, heavy breathing, snoring, whatnot, that's the two bulldogs over here, not me. So I'm disavowing the noise because I can hear them already. So
I can't turn off the ding from one of these electronic devices near me, so I apologize for that.
Oh, that's no worry. But shoot, let's see where we at. Oh, JL says, Greg, I'm curious. Who do you think would play the main characters in the Taking Care of Maya movie? Well, who do you want to play you?
That's a tough one.
Have you even thought about that jokingly? Who's going to play me?
Arnold Schwarzenegger from the first Terminator movie.
There you go. We can dream. We can hope.
And keep the glasses, the dark glasses.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's a tough one. The more interesting question, I think, for me, I don't know what romantic lead it would be. Most of there's not many actors out there I really admire. Like, I do really like, Reeves, now that I've learned so much about him, and the regular guy approach to living that he has. I really liked that.
We've got George Clooney here suggested, Liam Neeson suggested, Harrison Ford. I could see Harrison Ford.
Yeah, he was
Al Pacino or a Redford, make him look a little bit younger.
Pacino was in And Justice for All, which is another movie that came out in the early 80s that I liked. Okay, I thought it was a little over the top, but then that's Al's whole thing. So this reminds me, the movie Scent of a Woman is over the top soliloquy at the end, exonerating his friend, the young man who's getting railroaded by the powers that be. I stole a lot of his mannerisms, voice, and pace from that. I probably watched that 50 times, just that segment, because it's brilliant acting. Yeah, it's over the top, and even some of the lines are kind of corny, but the passion and the directness and the willingness to confront and say truth to power, I always admired. I love that. I've cribbed those lines. I've cribbed everything about that. I don't think, he's got the whole New York ethnic thing, Italian going. I don't really think that would work with me.
Did you have any crutch? I mean, other than that, did you have any crutches you used earlier on in your lawyering days? The things you did? Because the first guy I clerked for, he was a federal defender, and every time he would start in court, he would recite the Pledge of Allegiance very emphatically, and it was really cringe, as the kids say. And justice for all was how it ended. It's like, okay, the guy just robbed 11 banks. I mean, come on. What do you want to do? But did you have any of those crutches that you would just use as a crutch to kind of get the wheels started earlier on in the career?
Yeah, I think all lawyers, they crib off of, they mimic the lawyers that teach them how to try cases. And my mentor, who was an absolute SOB, but a great trial lawyer, Charlie Howell, from a family of great trial lawyers and judges. And
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but before I forget, William Shatner is the tuft of justice.
Would he be great?
That's actually a ridiculously good suggestion.
The tuft of justice.
But, Mr. Anderson. Wow. Sorry to interrupt the story. Continue.
Along those lines, though, I told you the Alexander Skarsgård story, right?
Yeah. No, I didn't hear this one.
Oh, well, we were Take Care of Maya debuted at the Tribeca Film Festival in, I think, May, and we did a little bit of the red carpet stuff, although, as a counsel, we weren't really that big of a deal, and Maya looked magnificent, Jack looked good, and Kyle and everybody, and so we were standing there, and Nick and I, and I actually brought my sister and brother-in-law to it as well, but we were all standing there in a group, and this guy walks by, and I'm like, blah, 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 blah. Looks exactly like Nick, except a larger head, which I've noticed all actors, lead male actors, seem to have these gigantic heads. And I looked over and I was like, Nick with a much enlarged head. And it was Alexander Skarsgård. And so we got this photo somewhere, and you should get Nick I got to get it somewhere so we can post it. I got those two together. And of course, Nick's about 6'5", or 6'6", and Skarsgård's like 6'7". So me at a lowly 6'2", 6'3", and then these two giant, but they are clones from each other. So we've got Nick perfectly set up now. Alexander Skarsgård would do that. And
I want to see that picture. That would be a good picture.
Well, they were all walking by us because they were all, Skarsgård directs and produces. Mm-hmm. And so we had him, and we had the guy that did Hateful Eight and did great director. Anyway, he walked by. 3 or 4 well-known directors and producers walked right by us as we're doing this, and so I kind of watched them. And when we went in, we were front and center with the Kowalskis, but down there was Henry Roosevelt, the brilliant director of Take Care of Maya, and Caitlin, the producer, and around them though were all of these incredible producer, director, actor Hollywood types, and that told me that maybe there would be a dramatization of this at some point.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Nicholas Starro, a fellow countryman of the Skarsgård, says Alexander Skarsgård is an amazing human being.
Yes, he really is. He really is. That's another one that I truly admire. I like those folks that don't ever put on airs about who they are and who just don't buy the bullshit around them. You know, they're just regular guys.
Well, and that's you. I mean, I've talked about a lot of my streaming, and that's one of your things. It's your authenticity comes through.
I try to.
That's the vibes that I get. I mean, that's who you are.
I get a lot of people that tease me a lot in a loving way. Some not so loving, but I've been very driven internally over my life. I've had a lot of success in a lot of different areas. I've always believed that it's much more important to have inner self-assurance and inner self-confidence such that you can take a lot of teasing and a lot of kidding and treat it all as in good faith, unless proven otherwise, and have about as thick a skin as possible. Because like I tell people, people ask, why don't you get upset when people say things about you in this trial and other trials? I don't really give a shit what anybody thinks other than those people that are close to me, that is family and close friends. If I think I've harmed one of them or I've done something inappropriate around them, then I am heartbroken and I beat myself up forever. But the greater public out there, random people, I really could not possibly care less. And that is a great benefit in our society, to not give a damn what other people think. It frees you up to go out and do what you think is right and to do the best job you can in situations. And so, yeah, I think one of the things that the jurors repeatedly said post-trial was that Howie and company, Ethan, and especially David, but I think all three of them were distant. I heard distant, unapproachable, too professional, too full of themselves. There were probably 5 other descriptions, but they all equated with somebody that you didn't want to have a beer with or be anywhere around unless you had to be. And I got repeated comments time and time again was, Greg and Nick seemed like a couple of guys you wouldn't mind going out and having a beer with. They'd probably be a lot of fun. And they would not be full of shit.
That's about as big a compliment as you can get.
That's what you want with a jury. I mean, if they don't, that's with a lot of what I do in opening and closing. People say, have you written out these erudite and well-crafted openings and closings with your bullet points and all the other stuff? And the answer is yes, I do. And then I promptly forget it all. And it's a miraculous thing happens from the time that I get up from counsel's chair and walk over to the podium. I seem to forget about everything I planned to do. And I just get up and I talk to them. I talk to them like regular people about practical things and logical deductions from what all of us in the courtroom are seeing and hearing. And if you got to give on some issues where it's obvious that maybe you haven't made the point you need to make, or I found that the amount of trust that engenders, that you're not trying to mislead people, you're not BSing them, even if it's at a pretty important point, if you haven't proven it, it's better that you give it up and that you're straight with the jury than to try to spin it in some way to keep your whole story like perfectly aligned. People sense really quickly if you're BSing them. And
I think you see that a lot in the criminal cases where you get the lawyers that start their arguments with, I know my client's a dick. I know my client's a horrible human being, But you can't hide the fact that the guy is a horrible human being. But you still have to defend him. He still has the right to a defense, and you still have to make some arguments. So you may as well just get it out before the other side tells you that your client's an evil human being.
Well, that's right. That's right. You have to be frank with the jury. You have to let them know what you really think about the case. And you have to give on the points where everyone in the courtroom knows that it's this way. And if you try to convince them it's not that way, you're going to lose all your credibility, and credibility is everything. You know, it's also interesting. One thing point I want to make, I get a lot of questions, and maybe I will hear about, Greg, when did you think that you really had them? When did you think that you really, more likely than not, were going to win, whatever winning may end up being? And it was that I felt we put on a really good case, and I focused on independent witnesses. That is, people that weren't getting paid by me to be an expert, though there were a few of those. Many of ours did it pro bono. And we had people who were fact witnesses, eyewitnesses, but weren't affiliated in any way with either party. And people like the physical therapist that you saw in the video helping Maya try to walk, both before and after. A social worker that used to work at Johns Hopkins. I focused my case on those kind of people and video and documentary evidence that was as independent as I could possibly make it from either side, for good, for better or for worse. And the way it came in, I thought it came in very, very, very persuasively. And so, like with many trials I've had, I knew where I've been the plaintiff, and I've been the defense more than the plaintiff in my career, but I knew that when we got to their case, when they got up and it was their turn to prove something, they had to blow the jury's socks off. They had to come in with overpoweringly persuasive, logical, rational witnesses and evidence that completely destroyed the image that we had put in the jury's mind of how this went down. And when I found out, like I think it was a Friday, and they're going to start putting on their case on Monday or Tuesday, and I found out that they were going to use video depots for the first 4 witnesses, that's when I knew. That's when I knew we were likely going to win. You just never start out your case with a bunch of mini movies. You know, it's just
it's not the most interesting thing to do.
No, it's not interesting. It's not persuasive. It's like, you know, it's like you're trying to manipulate the facts into these tiny little compartments and then build this complex little thing. Any one of which, if you pull out, is going to fall to pieces.
I knew you had it won about an hour and 20 minutes into the deliberations when the question came back. Now, can we see those calculation sheets again, please? That's like the first question. Like, and the second question is, give us the calculations, or this shit's going to take forever. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's the only question that just like, oh my God, the jury has a question. The jury has a question. It's like, yeah. Now, how do we calculate the damages again? Can you run that by us one more time?
Well, that's just a cliche, you know, when the jury asks for a calculator. That's for the defense lawyers.
So we don't get the big giant chart that showed us how to figure this out. Oh
well. Yeah, I was fairly confident through the whole thing. Not the whole thing, but by 3/4 of the way through, I felt pretty good about getting a verdict. I didn't think we'd reach 100 million. I didn't. I thought we would be somewhere. My biggest verdict before that, I think, was 71 million. I mean, it truly independent verdict. And I'd had some 20 millions here and there, but a bunch of teens. But yeah, I thought we would win most of the causes of action, but when I heard the answer to the first 3 or 4 questions, I knew. When they were reading them out, I knew that this is going to be an amazing verdict. Interesting thing was, yeah, well, that Maya and Kyle lost it at the yes as to whether Maya was battered and false imprisoned and whether Beata was a victim of intentional infliction of emotional distress. It wasn't the money that got them worked up. It was the fact that 6 independent people, citizens from the community, hearing all the evidence over 9 weeks, said, no, you're correct. And these people are bad and did you wrong. That's what really, more than anything else, helped that family heal to the extent it's healing.
And the EE Kowalski here says, yay, I really need Mr. Anderson's laugh booster this morning. Thank you. People keep telling me I need to clip the laughter and put it on my soundboard here.
Feel free. No license on that.
Nancy Joe M. Thank you so much for the huge super chat. Story about Judge Carroll reminds me of a moment during trial where Mr. Anderson was, please forgive the phrase, rambling, and the defense counsel was looking at each other like, what is he talking about? It's only in retrospect that I see his brilliance.
Oh, well, thank you. Boy, this is a constant point of why did you do the things that you did? That's a long one.
Well, now you can say to get a couple $100 million. That's why I did it.
That's exactly right. It's decades and decades of watching juries and watching scenarios unfold and knowing that Americans do not like to be shoved into a position or a thought process. They hate it even worse being manipulated. Now, a lot of times they are manipulated and they can't see it as it's happening. That happens a lot in politics because people have absolutely no virtue whatsoever there. But what I have learned through the years is that you have to let the jury lead you where they want to go, and you lay out the breadcrumbs, or however you want to put it, the stepping stones to get where you want to go, but you don't try to tug them along with you. You stay behind them emotionally, and you have them almost drag you to that conclusion that you want them to get to. And I also know that coming across as too slick and too over prepared and packaged reduces the belief in your sincerity and frankness tremendously. You just come off like another slick lawyer. And I just refuse to do that. Plus, it helps with me because I'm anything but slick. And I am also, sometimes a bit confused up there or not organized, and, so that helps. I'm not acting it. Let's put it that way.
And that's where the people behind the scenes that we never got to see during the trial, that's where they come in. And it's amazing to see when a trial goes so smoothly, where the lawyer's up there doing something unexpected comes in, then they get handed the note from someone in the second row, and they don't, without missing a stride, they just keep on going with the questions and rolling with it. There's such an army of people, support staff and things that help out so much that people never get to see.
Yeah. I bring them all in mind. Everybody knew Gabby. Everybody knew Sam. They knew Connie. They knew our team. They got to know who they were and what they did. And of course, the team loved it. They just loved it. That was Gabby's first trial. I think Connie's first trial. I'm actually sitting there. Sam's second, I think. Getting sworn in there in the courtroom was kind of cool. And then
that was really cool.
Yeah. And then actively participating in it by making an argument and then introducing everybody during the course of the day. For a young lawyer to be on national television and have that type of thing on your resume, I mean, that's just that sticks with you for forever. Oh, I was in the Kowalski case. I was there for that.
Day one. Ask questions. on one of the largest jury verdicts in American history. That's what I did on my first day as a lawyer. What did you do? That I was a little bit jealous. Of course, then that's an auspicious start.
That is an auspicious start. Well, she's gonna grow into being a fine lawyer. She already is. She's bright and extremely hardworking, and has really made up a lot of the backbone of the motion practice and prep for me. And I don't know if you saw, they had them on last night. I need to get these up here again. Another thing I need to post is all the photos that were taken and some video during the course of the trial, but back at the War House. And
yeah, I saw that picture of you there.
Yeah, all the prep that went into it, and all of us around that big old driftwood table, and it was
a nice house.
It was a $7.5 million house on the Gulf.
Well, there you go. That's why it looked like a nice house.
It's slept, no kidding, 20 people. It's owned by a senator, U.S. senator from, and I'm not going to say which state in the West, Plain States, but he was great. And there's photographs of his family up around there. And he knew that I had a property that I let people use or rent out from time to time in Idaho. And so you take good care of it if you're one of the people who ends up being the landlord of these things. So we took great care of the place, and but it had so many wonderful conveniences, like an elevator and coffee machines everywhere. And
you're in a big house when it's got an elevator.
Yeah, incredible view of the Gulf out there, and there were manatees and dolphin and whales and you name it out there. We would go kayaking, swimming out there, and it was just an idyllic situation for keeping your sanity. And I always had the Jimmy Buffett going in the background because it's pretty relaxing and
rip Jimmy.
It's humorous. Yeah, I know. Right in the middle of this, I lost Jimmy, who's always been a steadying force in my life with his music. I played in a band in college that did a lot of his stuff, and briefly, and it just his lyrics and everything always kept me pretty sane. So I always had the Jimmy Buffett going, and candles and flowers and anything that could make that place positive, upbeat, and livable. We did, and it paid off too. People liked being there. Our experts liked being over there. The Kowalskis liked being there. It wasn't a job, it was like meeting with a bunch of friends.
And nobody likes being in hotel rooms ever.
No, it's horrible. I've done enough of that. I don't do that anymore. It cost me a fortune, but it was astronomically expensive to do it, but it was worth it.
Do you want to mention what part of Idaho your home is in, or
Sandpoint,
or not? Okay, that's why she was talking about. Okay, all right.
North of Coeur d'Alene there. Yeah, I'm a big fly fisherman.
Almost Canada.
So, yeah, I know, 60 miles away. Yeah. I got a bunch of in-laws up there. Jen's family's up there, and
all mine are in Boise and Pocatello areas.
Okay, sure. Yeah, one of the experts there, Scott Richards, Dr. Richards, practiced in Pocatello for a while. But Sandpoint's got Lake Ponderay, which is 48 miles long, 12 miles wide, and has fantastic sailing. They've got a big J-24 fleet, and also I think there were Thistles Nationals there last year. So I love sailing and I love fly fishing, and there are 4 gold medal trout streams within 45 minutes. I can fish Washington in the morning and Montana in the afternoon, and then come back and fish Idaho in the evening.
Yeah,
that's what's so cool about being up in that little narrow. So
Well,
that's
God
why-
bless you for having the patience for fly fishing. I just can't. I hate things with a steep learning curve. If I'm not an expert within 30 minutes, I just don't want to waste my fucking time doing it. it
It's a
frustrates me.
lifetime. It
It's-
does.
I know.
I've been doing it for 30 years and I still can't double haul worth squat. I grew up on the bay in St. Augustine, Florida, right next to a place called the Conch House. And so I grew up saltwater fishing. And that's just a whole different ball game than these fresh mountain streams, you know. And
Well, that's what I like here about Busan is bass. In Korea, bass are a trash fish, and
really,
yeah. And then there's a river 5 miles from my house that's just loaded with wide mouth bass, and they're like, yeah, go just catch the shit out of these things because we don't want them around. We want our carp. They're delicious. The carp are the delicacies.
God, you gotta be kidding.
yeah. I'm like, okay, we'll do our best to get rid of some
poop on the bottom of the river all day. Oh my God.
Yeah, the bass are an invasive trash fish here. I'm like, yeah, we'll do our best to catch as many of them as we can.
I'm sorry. I'll try to relieve you of that burden.
We got a couple. Then we have a few more super chats here, and then I want to talk about something that just annoyed me since early on in the trial. First of all, Nicholas Starro says the Skarsgård clan could probably play all the characters.
Yeah,
there's so many of them. Yeah. Both dad and four brothers are all actors. Yeah. And Mathis again. Can we see the Whitney slides again? I forgot a zero. and Ruby says J Hatch number 1 error in my opinion. So much time defending DCF. They weren't defendants. Why?
Well, I think that the main reason was that they felt that my wonderful and beautiful wife Jennifer just joined us for a moment.
Hello. Hey. Hi.
Okay, so the way that went down was they hid behind DCF as a quote independent government agency that agreed with everything they did, and they wanted to put off all of the horrific decisions and things they did as though they were simply following orders they had. And I got in big trouble in an interview by calling it the Nuremberg defense, but it really was just following orders. And that was where they wanted to put up DCF as though it's this icon of independent government agency only out for the best of the child. And
well, you actually weren't the one that actually brought up the Nazis during the trial.
No, I didn't. And when I said that, I said I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I just said this is a reference from history. It's called the Nuremberg. Yeah. Of course, you know that's and then they came in and called the freaking Juror an SS guard, basically. You know?
Well, then we did. Someone did suggest that Kathy Bates from Misery would make a great SS.
Oh yeah, Bates would make Bates.
Sally Smith.
You know what? There's a lot of symmetry there, isn't there? That would work. Yeah.
I keep calling her Susan Smith. There's so many horrible people named Smith out there. I keep calling her Susan Smith. She was the other horrible Smith. Yeah, Sally Smith. And these two. Yeah. Go ahead.
What happened was that the way that they did it was Beatty and the other people assigned, social workers and nurses, sicked on the Kowalskis by risk management and senior management. They would decide things that they thought would add additional pressure to Maya and through Maya or directly to Beata and Jack. And they would then call DCF and say, you have no idea what they're doing now. We think they're putting ketamine in all of these Christian Catholic rituals that they do. And we think we've got to stop this. And so then it would be a phone call. And then within a day, there would be an edict come down from a DCF contractor. Remember, these were not state employees. These were contractors and sometimes subcontractor employees of DCF. So you'd have DCF, and then you'd have something like Suncoast Systems, and then you'd have a subsidiary hired by them, and then you'd have an employee of them who, there were 3 levels of contract before you actually got to anything that equated to being the state. But that person, who a lot of them you saw testify, would then send out an email that says that we at DCF have determined that there's a danger that Maya might be poisoned by additional amounts of ketamine, and we direct you to no longer allow her to have any biscuits or any donuts or any
Eucharist.
Any Eucharist. You believe that? That was just so stupid. And from there, then they wanted to wave that around and say, see, it wasn't our idea. But then when you just show the email and the phone call and the notes to that they had, we finally got that showed that, called so-and-so at DCF contractor and told them about ketamine in the stuff. And then, you just hold that up. And then a day later, there'd be a memo coming down to tell nobody bought it. Nobody, even if they could have gotten into it. I was actually interested in showing what was going on behind the scenes with DCF. And that's one of the reasons why, at the first part that they were screaming and yelling about me talking about DCF and the actions there, because if the jury had heard what was actually going on behind the scenes there between DCF and Johns Hopkins, you're right. They would have added another 0 to every one of those damages, because if they had heard that Howard Hunter had argued vociferously on the record before the court after Beata died, that Maya, and with all of the proof had been completely blown out of the water at that point, he still was arguing to send her up to live with a foster family skilled with psychiatric children
in
to
Detroit.
Go to a psych ward in Detroit, in Cincinnati, or someplace in the north center part of the state. I forget where. So she's either going to live in a psych ward or go to a psych ward every day while she lives with a family that has 15 other children, and they're all different degrees of psychosis. I mean, that's just such a healing thing for a child that just lost her mom. And I think if the jury had heard that, and we had Howard Hunter on tape saying it, we had his voice, and we wanted to play that, and the judge listened to it and went, I don't think so. That's where I think when we started to bring out some of our stuff, I think that reinforced the court's idea that no, we don't really want to bring in anything on DCF. That is an entirely new can of worms. And even though Johns Hopkins ultimately tried to stand behind them and bring it in after objecting to it when we wanted to, I think in that battle, if both sides had been able to bring the stuff in, I think they would have lost it, because their behavior was just so horrific.
Well, that kind of segues into the issue that I've been saying I want to get to. These are the 2 things here. Same guy with cancer says Ethan Shapiro is the kind of lawyer you hire to annoy and upset the other party. And thank you so much for that super chat, by the way. And Darth Raven says, please ask Greg, was Shapiro a good guy behind the scenes, or was he a jerk? I don't know how specific you want to get, but this is one thing I've been saying, and it annoyed me, and I wanted nothing more than to crawl through my monitor and punch him in the neck right at the close of trial, when you're choking up and he was doing that guffawing shit that he was doing. That was stunning, that he would just openly mock, scoff, and literally guffaw at the Kowalskis.
Totally
what kind of animal does that? Seriously, it's just.
Shapiro didn't come in until the end. We were dealing with Howard Hunter and
David Hughes,
who you guys are lucky you didn't have to deal with him more.
He was so over the top. To this day, I mean, everybody that was around that guy in the litigation has been damaged in some way, including us. But
why is that? Is he just one of those guys that comes in just guns blazing, and your first question is, why are you yelling at me?
No,
is he one of those guys?
Annoying.
He has He's got to be on the spectrum somewhere. Okay.
Okay.
We're not putting anyone down.
We're not putting anybody down. You'd say in the spectrum of vanilla versus chocolate likers, but he never knew when to stop. He never knew when enough was enough. And his mission was openly and obviously to create as much confusion and emotional negativity as he could with every one of our witnesses, and especially Maya. And he had some, I think that Beatty was like this a lot of ways. And I think Sally Smith had it, but there were certain people involved here that had this thing for Maya. It was, and I spotted it from the start, and I would tell Nick and Jen, I said, there's something very wrong here.
Some sort of weird vendetta or something, or just
was, well, maybe it ended up that way, but it was more this kind of fascination, weird attraction. I don't know. And again, there's a big, long, wide spectrum of weirdness and attraction. But whatever it was, they just could not let her be. They had to constantly be so deep into, for lack of a better term, deep into her shit, deep into her life and everything she did and everywhere she went and everything she wore and all of her friends and anything she chose to do. It's like they wanted to find out everything they possibly could about it. Yeah. The whole deal about every place that poor kid went, she had to give them notice within 5 days. We had to file court pleadings when she went to the dentist. And this is true. And to me, what I saw going on was that they had driven Beata to the point of suicide. And there was part of them in there that the message they were trying to send to Maya was fold, flip to say that your mom's crazy, acknowledge you're crazy, or we're going to drive you to exactly where your mom went. That to me was the goal through the whole thing. And it was repulsive. And it was like after you got out of one of these depositions, you wanted to take a shower. It was so icky to hear the same question that was inappropriate to begin with once, asked and asked and asked and asked again. And then when you object and said, counsel, you've asked that question 3 times before, then for 5 pages of deposition, you'd have them just going off on us and yelling and challenging and picking fights and very condescending, deprecating comments about whether I knew what I was doing and all of this big firm bullshit that that they're so superior to us. And it would just go on and on and on and on. And it went like that in every single deposition. And I would try to get some help from the court, and the court would yawn. And it wasn't just Judge Carroll, but the prior judge as well. And it's like, oh, you boys, just trying to get along. And the defense springboarded off of that. And that was like, it was ringing the dinner bell. It's like, oh, man, we can do whatever we want.
Yeah, nobody cares. Yeah.
Nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares. We can do anything we want to them. And they did. And there were no limits to what they were allowed to do or say to the Kowalskis. And we were infuriated by it. And a couple of times in hearings, I got really angry with the judge. And of course, that just ticked him off even more. He got like 2 times over back mad at me about it. So it was an untenable situation. And that's where a lot of the stress came in.
Well, I mean, one thing that Megan and I noticed while she was making her Brady Bunch graphics with the 7th floor coven and whatnot, but you look at all of them, you look at all of the other experts, you look at all of the defense lawyers, and none of them ever had a smile on their face. None of them ever looked pleasant. It's just
No.
they all had the same scowl throughout the whole thing.
Yep. They were always angry.
And the one another time I just wanted to crawl through the screen and just start knocking heads was, and I made a big deal about it. I got a little bit cursy on a little more cursy than normal on my stream. Was the first juror number 1 motion that was in the big omnibus thing? And, all right, that's really ridiculous because this seems to be about juror number 1's wife and not juror number 1. And what the fuck Jules had to do with it, I have no idea. Oh, hey, Jules, by the way. But it's when they filed the second one and then the third. I mean, I have zero particular ponies in this circus, and it made me viscerally angry to read the second and third submissions about juror number 1. And I made a big deal about it and said, that's one thing that you have to do. I don't care how aggressively and zealously you advocate for your client. You still have to be able to look at your damn self in the mirror every morning and like what you see. And I would never put something on a piece of paper that I would be ashamed of. I would look at and go, yeah, I wish I hadn't said that. I have to be able to look at myself in the mirror, and I cannot fathom how they could do what they were doing to Maya, do what they were doing to juror number 1 and Jules and everybody else, and look at themselves in the mirror and go, I was the best person I could possibly be today.
I think that they were operating on the idea that if they were the exact opposite of being the best person they could be, that would ultimately prevail, that was the key to the case.
How? I just...
Because they weren't interested in winning it with the jury. They were interested in causing as much harm as possible. This was all about attack. An attack. You sued us. We did all this stuff to you. You had the effrontery to sue us for what we did to you. Don't you realize who we are? We're Johns Hopkins. Nobody sues us. We're the best. Nobody accuses us of medical malpractice. We're the best. And you're accusing us of all these things. You need to die. And
that's probably the question.
Drive them to the point of no life anymore.
That's probably the question I got most of. I had to just categorize and sort of rank questions. I think the question I probably got the most was, how are those guys still retained by Johns Hopkins? And I said, because they're doing exactly what they're doing. That's why.
There's an industry out there. There are insurance companies, but more insurance companies tend to just be interested in getting the claim resolved for the minimum amount of money. That's how they make money. They're not interested in the emotional aspect of it, but there are certain adjusters out there who have psychological issues who partake of that theory of harm to the other side, driving them nuts. But there are in particular companies out there driven by management that has a screw loose, or more likely some 4'11" general counsel who wants to inflict as much harm on the world as possible. And not speaking of anybody in particular, but their way of doing things, their modus operandi, is to make suing them the most unpleasant thing you'll ever do in your life. And their belief system is that if you are just as obnoxious, threatening, harassing, difficult, unpleasant, and then lying and cheating whenever you can get away with it, especially before the judge, that you will cause the few people who will actually sue you to settle quickly and cheaply. B, most of the people that start to get into that say, oh man, life is too short to be around these kind of people. I'm getting the hell out of here. And again, The case either doesn't get prosecuted, it gets transferred over to somebody who has no idea what they're doing in some form or fashion. Anybody with any sense who has any alternative just won't get involved with it because it's so draining of your humanity to be around that. And they know it. And they hire certain specific law firms and lawyers who have a reputation. There is an insurance defense firm out of Miami that is openly known that this is their tactic. And they're going to say behind the judges and the court reporters' back, where nobody else can hear it but you, the absolute worst things you can possibly imagine.
Is that the one that called me the B-word?
Yeah. That's the one that came over the rail at Kelly. Nice. Yeah. Well, I've had paralegals physically assaulted. I've had my wife called an effing B in open court. I've had one of my female associates called that in open court. I've had I don't even want to get into some of the stuff. It's so repulsive. But that kind of behavior is out there. And we had a big discussion last night with Rob about why does the bar tolerate that kind of stuff? Well, it shouldn't. And they know that they shouldn't. But the firms that do that know a few things. They know that they generally are big enough and they always keep a few people involved in the bar stuff to keep a facade of respectability. And if you do file a grievance against them, then they just come down on you whole hog, and that's a whole new battle. And so now you're dealing with these people who are being a-holes to you in the litigation, and then you do what you should do as an officer of the court and call them on it and file bar agreements. And now you're in the fight of your life over there, and they're lying and misrepresenting and saying you did it too, and bringing everything else in and ruining your life over here. So then it just becomes just such a freaking hassle to even call them on it. And even if you do, and you stand up and you call them on it, a lot of times the bar's like, why don't you two just get along? The judges say that. Why don't you two just get along? Why are you bringing this to me? You're officers of the court. Why don't you just? Why can't you guys?
The judge in that one case was filing her nails and clipping coupons.
That's right. She was clipping.
Oh
coupons.
No!
That way. Yeah.
That's one thing I loved about Deborah Salisbury's her affidavit. I loved Deborah Salisbury's affidavit for the reason we did a whole show on that. Where that's the one thing that you have an affirmative duty as a lawyer to rat someone out that's lying. If you know another lawyer is misrepresenting something to the court, you have an affirmative duty, or you're just as guilty of an ethical violation. So that's why I loved that she came forward and said, this is my duty to report that they are misleading and they've made intentionally false statements about me and my representation that they could have frickin' figured out if they had just gone and looked at the damn docket, which is the easiest frickin' thing you can possibly do. And then she ended it with, whatever order you give, I want you to specifically state that I did my duty as an officer of the court to report their lies.
And it's going to be very interesting with Judge Carroll at the end of this, when everything is said and done, and he loses jurisdiction because it's in front of the second DCA, to see what he does. Is he going to make some referrals to the bar? Is he going to say, I had lawyers in open court directly misrepresent material facts to me and material facts to the jury, and when I called them on it, they again misled me or tried to mislead me about these facts? Is he going to? Because the only time you get anything done with bar prosecutions of aberrant behavior is when it's from a judge. If a judge reports you over, then they're going to pay some attention to it. Now, as I said last night on Rob's show, in their defense, I have a very good friend from high school who's in the bar prosecution. She just retired. I see her once a year at the Episcopal reunions. And we had a long talk about it. And the gist of what she said was, Greg, we don't have enough bar prosecutors to prosecute all the a-holes out there that are stealing their clients' personal injury awards in toto, or nipping off part of the trust account that they're supposed to be protecting, or any one of 100 different absolutely horrific things that involve true crimes. And we can't even keep track of all those folks. You know how many lawyers are in this state? I mean, it's got one of the highest percentages in the country of lawyer per population. Tens of thousands of them, over 100,000. And out of those, you know, there's a lot of them that are just should not be lawyers. And she said it's just impossible for us with the resources we have to go after what we consider lesser crimes, which is your run-of-the-mill gross misrepresentation to the trial court or abusive, sexist, misogynistic, terrible behavior to a female lawyer or a racial slur or just general deviousness. We don't have time to prosecute all that because there's so much of it. And so we're really in a quandary here in our practice. We're in a quandary. And while I'm on a roll, I got another big bitch about how this is happening. Okay. It's because of the law school. It's because of the law school ethics professors. It's because of the law school ethics professors. Yeah. What they're teaching them now is a derivation of this woke stuff where don't worry about doing your job well. Don't worry about actually comporting yourself as a professional. Don't worry about actually learning your job and listening to maybe somebody who knows what they're doing. What you need to really be looking at is whether the partners you work for are actually violating this, and this. And this, and this is, they're presumed discriminatory, they're presumed to be sexist, racists, anti-trans, anti-this, anti-that, and they're presumed to be defrauding their client. That's what they're taught in law school now in ethics classes. And their duty as associates is to report the lawyers in their firm, particularly the more senior lawyers in their firm, when they see this, because they're the final stand against this kind of behavior. So instead of concentrating on what's really hurting the bar and what's really hurting the relationship between the bar and society, they're concentrating on the 1 in a million. I'm not saying it's not out there, but generally among lawyers, that's not a consistent problem. All of that racism, sexism, all that stuff. We're pretty well educated about that. What is a problem is what I just went over about just demeaning and horrific conduct to fellow counsel and to witnesses and clients in litigation in particular. They're not worried about that at all. They're worried about, there's a Florida bar rule. I can't wait to figure out the rocket scientist that came up with this one. That when you leave, if you have had any contact with a client, no matter what your age, no matter who you are or the circumstances, you should write to the client and give the client the option of coming with you or staying with the firm. And you should require that the firm send out an election sheet so that the client states whether they want to stay with the firm or go with you. Now, the way that came to my attention is that I had a second-year associate that had absolutely minimal involvement with, at that point, it was Daimler Chrysler, I think. And this is I don't know how many billion-dollar company that I'd been representing by that point for probably 20 years, and innumerable trials. And I knew everybody up there. It was at Highland Park, and then we went out to Auburn Hills, and now everybody's outsourced. That's another story. But this lawyer wrote to the general counsel of Daimler Chrysler and then copied a bunch of the assistant general counsels and staff counsels for litigation and announced to them that he disagreed, that he was leaving because he disagreed with our billing rates, and that they must tell him and me that they want to stay with us rather than going with him. And he was not alone. This is a kid with like 28 months of experience.
Oh, nice.
That maybe took 2 or 3 depositions and some Chrysler warranty case.
And when was the reply? Now, who are you again?
They didn't even pay any attention to it. They just totally ignored it.
I would imagine.
Yeah, and he, of course, he was getting fired, and he left, and then wrote me back and told me that I was in violation of the bar rules because he had written this and I had not demanded that they respond, that my own client respond to this guy and tell him whether or not they were electing to stay with him or me. That's
stupid.
The mentality. That's the
stupid.
mentality of a significant percentage of the kids coming out of law school now. They don't know their rear end from juicy fruit, but they know all about any kind of woke stuff and all about how large law firms, we're not even a large law firm, we're freaking 10 to 12 lawyers, but how all these firms are gouging the client and not taking care of people the way they should and not doing this and not doing that. And it's all focused inwardly towards their place of work rather than outwardly to how you're interacting with the community and with the outward bar.
I've only been doing this 2 years and I'm not getting paid as much as the managing partners, and they're making me work late at night, and I had to work on a weekend once.
I tell stories of what it was like in the olden days, where you got called in on the weekends all the time, and there was a junior partner who was specifically assigned to walk through the office at 6:30 and see if you're still at your desk.
That happened to me all the time. I was the first one in and the last one out, and worked Saturdays a month.
Yeah. And you tell them that story and they look at you like you're from friggin' Mars. And their whole, you can tell what's going through their mind is, God, were you stupid? And I keep saying, look, how do you expect to learn how to be a lawyer if you're not going to follow the lead of people who actually know what they're doing?
I still remember the happy day the managing partner announced, I don't think we need to work on Saturdays anymore. Thank you. Thank you.
You can have a life.
But I see it here too. You get the new kids will come in and you go, hey, we need this done. Like, but I don't have time. What else you got? It's that's literally your life. Your life is built in 6-minute increments. All you have is time. You've got 24 hours. You're just saying you value something else higher than your job at the moment. And feel free to enjoy it.
That's where we are in hiring. We've got great associates right now. I mean, our associates are represented by people like Sam, who works her rear end off constantly and doesn't have to be asked to work when she needs to or to stay late or do anything like that. We've got a fine group now. We've solved the turnover problem, knock on wood, but we had a hell of a turnover problem for a long time in the late teens and early 20s. And it was kids that came in and they stayed long enough, but they'd been at the sign was always, but it was true of all of them. So what can you do about it? They were in their 3rd year and they'd already been at 3 firms.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a warning sign. That's a flag, but that's all you could get, really. So
I don't want to sound like a bunch of olds yelling, but it's the same thing. I see it here. It's like, well, you don't work this. Yeah. Because I did that 20 years ago, and by God, I've earned my right to go home at 6 o'clock and make you stay here. Just earn your stripes. That's why you can't start at the top.
They don't. They don't start at the top. They do not get the fact that you have to earn it and you have to learn it, and they want all of it right now. And like a lot of people, they want all the power, all the money, and none of the responsibility and none of the work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to find. It's taken me forever to get the team I've gotten together so far. That's why we've been successful lately. But it's hard to find people who realize that the best thing they're getting is the training, because you know, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach him how to fish, feed him for a lifetime, teach them how to be a great lawyer, and they're going to have a good income the rest of their life to support themselves and their family if they so choose. You know, they're going to, if you really know what you're doing in this business, there's always going to be people that need you and they're going to pay you. But if you're just going to hack around and be a jack of all trades, master of none, or not even master of some trades, and expect to get treated like you're a king when you have absolutely no idea what you're doing, you know, only disastrous things can happen.
That was literally, unironically, literally the very first sentence that anyone spoke to any of us day one of law school. We all got in the moot courtroom, and this was right before the look to your left, look to your right, one of you is going to be gone by the end of the month or something like that. But the very first thing they said is, just remember, there are no unemployed lawyers. There are only sole practitioners. That was literally the first sentence of law school.
Sorry, I laughed. That's funny.
I love that. Back in the 80s, we call them solo practitioner shoes, because all the solo practitioners had shoes that were invariably scuffed up and in a color not found in nature. You know? That's how you do it. Are you wearing solo practitioner shoes?
That's why you know, the Simpsons, Lionel Hutz is he's my spirit animal. It's like, oh yeah, like all he's watching LA Law or something on TV. He's like, yeah, like all lawyers have belts.
Oh yeah, that doesn't happen. We're a Sansa belt generation.
In your case, your next pizza's free.
Yeah. There's a great story out of it was from what was a great humor magazine, Harvard, no, National Lampoon.
Lampoon, yeah.
And there was the International Society of Mall Lawyers who had offices in shopping malls.
Right next to the doctors with a bendy pen chiropractors, yeah.
And you could order, and I actually had one. I got to get one made. It had a big approved, and there on the ring it says Society of Lawyers with Offices in Malls. You can stamp things.
I did like Lionel Hutz's business card. I can't believe it's a law firm. Contingent. We work contingency, no fees. He's like, oh, wait a minute, there's a grammatical error. We work contingency, no fees.
Yeah. Your commas are placed inappropriately.
Yeah.
It's a funny profession, that's for sure. Sometimes you get to do good stuff, but there's a lot of weirdness too.
You're doing the good stuff though. That's the thing. Is you kind of, I think, get lost in this, the sacrifices that you guys have made for this, that lawyers don't do. Lawyers don't do what you guys have done in your pursuit of this case.
Yeah.
It's I mean, above and beyond doesn't even begin to describe the investment that you guys have put into this. And I don't want to get overly dramatic, but it is something that's seriously impressive, and it does go to both you and the Mrs. character as people that you would do this, and especially when you look at the other side, I think is more the norm.
It's a self-preservation, I think, that motivates the other side, because it's not for the weak of heart to take this kind of risk. And if I didn't have the support of my wife and kids,
and your paralegals
and partners, and my partners, I mean, I just had a confluence of great people around me that supported me through it and helped me make good decisions. Ultimately, I have to make all the big decisions, and there were about 2 million of them that I made, that if any one of them had been the wrong one, it would be a completely different story now. It would be like a civil action, you know, where there'd be just a picture of me in a deathwood apartment sipping soup at the end.
Well, you didn't make those decisions though. You made the right one. And I guess it goes back to Hunter and Company. This is the thing that I think shocks a lot of people. They're not out to rectify a situation. They have two goals in life. One, to make sure their clients don't pay anything, and two, to make sure the Kowalskis and you go bankrupt. That's their objectives.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that. That is literally where they focus their energy, burying under documents. They have a vast army of people just cranking out documents, putting things in the old, you have to give us the discovery on this. Well, here it's somewhere in the middle of this dump truck load of things that you can never get through. That is literally a tactic for a lot of the hospital and the insurance lawyers, is to bankrupt the claimant.
Yep. That is exactly what they try to do. And if they don't feel like they're doing it, they redouble their effort. They just assign more associates. And if you don't have a judge that cuts it off and says, "This is my one big complaint with Hunter Carroll," Judge Carroll was, there was no excuse for having 52 summary judgments. There's no excuse for having 103 motions in limine. There's no excuse for having 5 depositions of Maya. I understood why he was doing it, because I think he spotted from the first that it was more likely than not that we would prevail if the facts ever got there, and he found a way to wind through that maze to get us to the court. So I have the highest admiration for the man. But I don't think until we got to trial and he started to see
what we had to deal with every day.
Yeah, what we had to deal with every day, and then really see me and Jen and Nick, Sam, everybody as human beings, that it started to become clear to him just what a price we had paid going into this. And I am hopeful that when we get to present in our motion for sanctions and our arguments on the sanctions that we won already but have not been awarded, and our fee claims, that the court will see what went down and just how horrific it was. I mean, Jen and I never had a major holiday without it getting totally and completely screwed up by the defense. Every single major holiday, July 4th, Memorial Day, Labor Day, Christmas, New Year, Halloween, Thanksgiving, right beforehand, we would get inundated with a stack of pleadings and stuff this high. And they would all have little time bombs in them and surprises.
Yeah.
And a lot of judges don't ever stop to think, oh, well, wait, these guys are getting paid by the hour over here at about $400, $500 to crank out all this stuff. These guys haven't gotten paid in 4 years. Maybe I should cut down a little bit on the amount of stuff that these guys over here do, because 99% of it has zero effect on this case other than to make these guys' lives absolutely horrific.
That's why we sold our house to live in a smaller house.
Yeah, where we're sitting right now, half the size.
And who does that? I mean, that's what I mean by you guys are you're superheroes. You're superhuman. Who does that?
I don't know. I question it a lot.
We're just crazy.
We're just crazy.
Well, eventually a check's coming in.
I think so. But then you deal with every single major case I've had where I've won a lot of money. I've had, you will not, well, maybe you will because you've been there, but the experience after or as the check is coming in, after all the work is done, after all the risk has been taken, after everything is paid off, suddenly what we've done becomes an incredibly small part of how we got there. Somehow it was the lawyer that did some bit work over here or handled this part of the case or handled that part of the case. Or whatever the contract was, it doesn't make any difference. Suddenly what they did really was the reason why the whole case got won. And if you listen to them, cocktail party or otherwise, it really wasn't anything that Anderson Glenn did or Greg or Jen did or any of that. They just tried the case. They just financed it. They didn't, it was really us when we helped them with that one memo that locked it in. And then you get the inevitable demands for ridiculous amounts of the fee. So I'm waiting for that. Fortunately, as you get older, you get a little craftier about stuff. And so I no longer tolerate that BS. And I'm very, very, I don't make promises to anybody, and I don't put anything in writing about it unless I absolutely have to, because I know what's coming at the end of it.
Real quick, has your audience heard the story the first time you talked with Howard Hunter?
Oh, I haven't. I don't care if they have. I haven't. I want to hear it.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, that was a double plus weird one.
Okay,
so,
I'm yours.
Howard Hunter lived literally down the street from Greg as
St.
children.
Augustine. Yeah, we went to the same elementary school.
But
did you know each other?
A couple years older.
Yeah, he was in third. He was in sixth grade when I was in third grade at R.B. Hunt Elementary in St. Augustine. We both live on Davis Shores, the island, the Anastasia Island there off St. Augustine. And he lived. It's an absolute certainty that at some point I played a pickup basketball game with him or something. I had to have seen him. St. Augustine is such a small town, particularly back then, that I had to have seen him 100 times growing up. But when you get involved in a big case, particularly if you're a pro, you pick up the phone to the opposing counsel and you say, "Hey, I'm Greg. I'm going to be on the other side of this, and I think I remember you were in such and such a case before, and I don't know if you recall, but we were in the same deposition and so and such." If you've been practicing that long, and the other lawyer's been practicing for forever, there's a pretty good chance that you cross paths at some point, or more likely there's somebody from their firm that you know well, or that they know from your firm.
Yeah.
But you try to establish the sheepdog and coyote relationship from the old Bugs Bunny things, where they walk together up to clock in with their lunch pails and they beat the crap out of each other. And then they walk on together. That's what you try to establish, and you try to step out of character a little bit, and you try to talk a little bit if it's a pro, if it's somebody, a really good lawyer on the other side. You try to step out of character a little bit, and you're not beyond, at least I'm not beyond, acknowledging, I got some, there's some issues here I gotta win over. You guys might have a problem here, but I probably have a problem there. And then they say, yeah, I know, I gotta shore that up. I'm not sure we can get past that, but we'll do our best. It's nothing specific, but it's more or less saying we're both professionals. We both got to the point of being on the other side of this case from each other by being good. And let's try to establish a little bit of trust in being officers of the court. And let's not sink to the base level of things. Let's try to keep it. It's going to be tough. It's going to be competitive, and it's going to be difficult to not lose our tempers and to not get emotionally tied up. But let's try not to as much as possible, because we both got to live with ourselves. And you and I, and the big thing is, at that level, I might have had Howard as a co-defendant in a case the next year, where we're both on the same side against the plaintiff, joining forces. So you don't want to burn bridges, right? So in this conversation, I introduced myself, and then we found out pretty quickly that we, gone to the same elementary school, and then I went to Episcopal High School in Jacksonville. He went to St. Augustine High, and anyway, we went kind of through that, and we just, I was fascinated by his views of St. Augustine at that time. And then we started talking about the case, and he said, "Well, tell me what you know about the case. What do you think about it?" And I said, "Well, I don't know that much about it. I just know what I've read in some of the transcripts, some of the things I've seen in the underlying shelter action. But it sounds like some of your clients were a little off the reservation on some stuff, and and I think she really does have CRPS. And
No. Can I interrupt for a second?
Oh, she's going to tell you the real story.
I was in the room, and what makes me angry to this day is that Howard Hunter pretended like he knew nothing about the case. He's like, "Oh, please tell me about it," even though he had been involved from the get-go. So he lied to us from the beginning, and I'm still angry about that. So Greg is being really nice. I'm still pissed.
And I am too, inwardly. I was going to build up into it, but Jen's a little more direct than I on such things. And so what happened was he kept trying to draw information out of me, and then Jen's giving me like the laser stare, like this guy's playing. And I said, I kind of sensed he was playing. And so I gave him a little disinformation here and there. He kept trying to draw things out and playing like he had absolutely no idea what was going on. But, I'm no dummy. I did figure out that he was playing me. So, like I said, I used a little disinformation and pleaded ignorance on such things. But Howard deliberately tried to mislead me on certain things, not only about him not knowing about them, but then doubling down on it and trying to tell me things that were absolutely positively not true. And otherwise poisoned the relationship from day one, because I don't know what he was thinking and what advantage he thought he was going to get with me. I think the thing that pissed Jen and I off most was the thought that he considered us, he had such little respect for us and our skill set, that he really thought that he could take us by just scheming, and he was going to outthink us, and his brilliance and craftiness was going to win the case. And that was sort of the way they went into it. Not sort of, this is the way they went into the whole thing. It was one trap after another. But when I found out very quickly Howard had lied to me on multiple different points, and in fact Howard had been into it up to his eyeball, and from my point of view, Jen's point of view, we know that he engineered a lot of some of this terrible stuff at the end with no basis for doing so, since he only represented the hospital and they weren't parties to any of this. But I don't know what was going through his mind. What did he think, that like we were so dumb that he could just like scare us off, or by misleading us we would never figure out what the actual facts were? Why do that? What?
See, I don't understand that.
I don't. Double board certified with hundreds of jury trials and multiple multi-million-dollar verdicts in multiple states and multiple areas. It's a pretty good shot they know a little bit about what they're doing. So why would you start out the relationship with deception? I never got that.
No, I don't understand. To me, this is. It's supposed to be an honorable profession, you're supposed to be professionalism and collegiality, because, like you said, the person you're up against today, you might be working with or for down the road somewhere. Why would you want to? I don't even like doing negotiations. I'm a terrible negotiator, because I just look. You came into this room knowing what your bottom line is. We came into the room knowing what our bottom line is. Let's not do the 100 and 0 and then spend 6 hours trying to get to 50. If you want 50, say 50. And if you say 60 and I say 40, then we can save a bunch of time. Let's just cut the shit and let's just be professional about it.
Yeah, I'm kind of
the same way.
Yeah, I don't have time for it. And it's also insulting in a way. It's like, how many times have we played this game before? 2,000, 10,000 times?
Yeah, exactly.
Different cases over the years. Why are we playing this game? I know where you are likely to be within, 5-10%, and you know pretty much where I am, between 5 or 10%, unless you don't deserve to be where you are as leading this case for the defense or the plaintiff side. So why don't we cut the shit and just get down to it and figure out, what is our delta here, and then we'll see what the facts are to persuade one side or the other to the side of the delta that's best for them. Right.
And I don't have any inside information, but I'm assuming this probably could have been worked out for a lot less than $200 million.
We're just speculating, anyway, so we can tell you. Okay. So here's the history of it, and I don't really give a shit if Howard or anybody else is upset, because it's become public record every place else. But in the first mediation they made, this was 2.5, 3 years ago, honey. The first one, 2021. We'd already been litigating at that point for 3 years, 2 years. 2018, 19, 20, 21. Yeah, about 3.5 years. And so we put together a PowerPoint, which I actually looked at a little while ago, and it was pretty impressive. It had virtually everything that we were going to prove at trial, and did prove a trial in it. And Brian Haskell, who was representing Sally Smith and the contractor from the state, Suncoast. Brian's a fine lawyer, and he's ethical and straight shooter. And ultimately, we were able to settle with him within a few months after the mediation. Not at mediation, but it pretty much set it up. But anyway, they made an offer at mediation of $1 million. And I found out after a lot of digging that Howard's contribution to it was possibly $100,000. If it was a guarantee, we would take the $1 million, with the other side paying $900,000 and Howard paying $100,000. So he put $100,000 on it after 2.5 years of litigation. So then through the course of it, and there's that whole pre-suit process in Florida where you're supposed to, we have to give the other side essentially our entire case, including experts. And then they have 6 months to dick around with it, only to tell us that the case is worthless. So they get a 6-month lead on all their investigation and all of the stuff, knowing everything that we have, and then we get to file suit. The legislature, in its infinite wisdom, thinks that that's really going to stimulate a lot of settlements. And in fact, it's only stimulated about 5% settlements, and that's only of the really shitty cases that are worth $50,000 and $100,000 cost of defense stuff. So anyway, the next round wasn't until 6 months before trial.
Wow.
Yeah, it was last spring. And the morning of the mediation was the morning that the People magazine article with Maya on the cover came out. So we, of course, picked up a dozen magazines at the Jiffy Mart and brought them in and put it into our PowerPoint. So now by this point, we've been in litigation on 5 years or so. I mean, how much more do you need to know? And we'd already gotten punitive damages granted. We'd already defeated them once on appeal. We had them pinned down. We had their experts pinned. I thought we were sitting in a wonderful position. And then you've got this very presentable plaintiff who's on the cover of People magazine about what happened to her. They never made an offer.
Really?
They never made an offer. As they were leaving, Howard mumbled something about, well, we were here between 1 and 4, and you guys are you're just completely unrealistic. And I'm like, that's not even the medical bills, dude. And so they marched out. I had asked to speak to the adjuster for MCIC Vermont alone, which I did, and just talked to her about the case a little bit. I don't know what happened there, but we got no more offers until 45 days before the trial. We filed our proposals for settlement, and which we've beaten, obviously, tremendously, much more than the 25% overage that we needed to have. Howard filed $1 for Jack's claim, $1 for Kyle's claim, $1 for the estate, and $1 million for Maya, and $1 for Maya's punitive damages.
Well, that's just a jackass. I got no words for that. Well, I do have words, but that's insult. That's beyond. I don't know. It's not even insulting. What's worse than insulting?
It was to send a message that we think your case is such shit that you're so far beneath us, and we're going to kick your ass with one hand tied behind our back, and it's beneath our dignity to even be in the same room with you. That was the send away. Now here's something that's going to be, if you had another question on it, but I had a transition thought about what we're going to get into.
Wait, can you hold that? Can you hold that for just a quick second while we go through a couple of super chats here? I'm getting way behind here. Vodka Blood, thank you for being a member for 7 months. Man after my own heart. And Mama Rowe, Greg, was your team aware of Alton Byrne's connection to Judge Carroll prior to trial? P.S. I grew up on a J24 in Coeur d'Alene. Hey, hi, Jennifer.
Well, there you go. Did she really? Oh, wow.
Well, see, that's I was going to ask that. In my theory, I think they put Alton Byrne on the team specifically because of his past connection with Judge Carroll.
Absolutely. And Pat Kroll's was his boss at his first law firm. She was the senior partner over Judge Carroll when Judge Carroll was an associate.
I did not know that.
I did not know a lot of that stuff until it was way into it.
Wow. Didn't know that. But yeah, I mean, that was my theory, that they just put him on there specifically because he had been the judge in Judge Carroll's family issue with his father. I mean, he clearly wasn't any better than anybody else. And Choosy Heretics choose Carnation Revolution now. Thank you so much for the $10. And Juror number 1, good to see you here, sir. As always, it's a pleasure. Remembering Dracula has no re-election and it has a reflection in a mirror, so how can they live with themselves? Dracula's actually not living, so it's easy for them to do the things they do. Right? They're not living, and they don't have anything to look at in the mirror.
I love Paul.
You got me there. I guess that answers my question. And Mathis again, thank you, and thank you so much for the super chat there, everybody. Mathis agrees again. Judge C's own words, appearance of impropriety. It was like a what do you say? It was like a wisp or a scintilla of impropriety,
right?
And public confidence into the system speak to why the attacks on Paul were over the line. They were over the line because they were, full stop. You leave jurors alone. That's just the thing. The Japanese Yakuza, thank you so much. Kind of drunk, but I thought this interview was on Thursday, not on Wednesday. Might have heard wrong all week long, or my head was on the wrong date. But I'll start from the beginning and catch up when you might have ended the stream. Well, thank you so much, and you all have a good one. Well, thank you so much for the super chats. Come back and give some more if you don't remember these.
We need to have a career board.
Been there, done that from my neck of the woods, just up over the hill from where I grew up. I thought that once you passed the bar, you were entitled to be a partner. Automatically smile. Yeah. There is that sense of entitlement out there.
Is he an ethics professor at one of them law schools?
Jewel, there's another Jules here. Jewel, such an awesome interview for 2 outstanding lawyers. Well, just one. Thanks, Vices and Mr. Anderson.
You're a great
and
lawyer.
Adara the Wholesome. As a fellow Northern Idahoan, I've always loved flying over. Wow.
Ponderay.
Yeah. Ponderay. Gosh. It's huge, even from the air. Much love from Boise area, Jeff. Come over for dinner. Yeah. Wow. See, that was so much of my childhood was doing things like rafting or tubing down the Snake River and just doing all kinds of fun stuff. That's where my whole family's like from Idaho. My father's family's all from Star Valley, Wyoming, and northern Utah.
Wow. I'm just giving a jump away. Well, when you make it back, you got to come see because it's gorgeous. We're right there. We're in Sandpoint, and we're right on that little spit of land there between the railroad bridge and the lake, and it's just fantastic, right on the lake. And and we got a fantastic ski resort right there. Schweitzer's 10 minutes away up the mountain. Pretty. It's
God's country up there. No alligators.
Nope. Thank goodness.
Okay, that was all the super chats. Thank you guys so much for the support. Now you're having a segue thought. Did I distract you from it? Can you remember what it was?
So here's something interesting for everybody to to consider. The judgment will be as the verdict was, separated out and itemized based on every event with its own individual questions about whether it constituted a battery or false imprisonment or whatever it is. And it has its own damages assigned, and it has its own punitive damages assigned, right? So that means that if the second district disagreed with the ruling of the judges about immunity or something like that, you can simply deduct that off of the judgment, which means you don't have to retry this case. You do not have to retry the case. The only way you'd have to retry the whole case is if they had any merit to a case-wide thing, which is why they went after Paul, and they went after the juror, because that was a new trial error where you need something completely new, and I have no basis there, but that doesn't mean they're not going to appeal it. But in terms of the directed verdict motions and all this, we did some calculations the other day looking at what it came down to, and my math may be off by a couple million, but I think if you looked at 226.5 million times 9%, it comes out to 20 million a year divided by 365. That's $55,849 a day. And then, of course, some of my Duke buddies promptly took those numbers and divided it into how long it takes to go to the bathroom to figure out how much money I would make going to the bathroom based on that per day. It's an important fact to know. But I got to use critter terms, but I didn't. Anyway, so if you looked at the 18 months it would take to appeal, somewhere between 12 and 18. So you're looking between 20 and 30 million, really, in interest. Okay. So if you, and the judge has already knocked off a bunch on a remediator. So the risk to appeal to even see if you could get any more knocked off is about $30 million. And you got to post a bond for $50 million. Why would you appeal in this instance if it's going to cost you so much more to appeal than you could ever possibly make back? In other words, the way the court's got it set up, there is no monetary reason to appeal, because even if you could get the judge to knock off another 5 or 10 million here or there, he'd have to knock off $30 million more, or the appellate court would have to knock off $30 million more to offset the interest that's going to accrue during the time to figure out if they would do that. Now, why that's interesting is if they appeal and push and appeal, it means that it is not for any economic reason whatsoever. It means that they're doing it not because they're trying to protect the company and all the poor kids that aren't getting their cancer treatments because of our punitive damages verdict and all that. It means simply that they're doing it just to do it, just to delay things and to screw with the Kowalskis and us. Because there's no financial reason to do it. Why would you do it then? That's
that was the thing that just struck me from the instant after the verdict was handed down. Again, I guess it falls into the category of they still don't get it. The goodwill damage that must be being done to Johns Hopkins because of this. You'd think they'd go, I mean, that's the perfect opportunity to go, all right, the jury has spoken. We effed this up really, really poorly. We've initiated, we've put in these safeguards and these steps, A, B, C, and D, to make sure this kind of thing never happens again. We're horrifically sorry for this, and you can count on us to make sure that we better ourselves and we take care of people, and we're donating a shit ton of money to whatever cause. They could come out looking fairly decent, but I don't get why they don't. There's a financial loss and then just the goodwill loss. I don't understand.
I don't It's like nothing I've ever seen before. I don't know about you. You've seen a lot too, but it's like nothing I've ever seen before. The level of pure rage at getting caught at doing something awful, and then being willing to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars unnecessarily for no other reason than to punish somebody that caught you doing something wrong. That's psychopathic behavior.
I completely agree.
That's at least sociopathic behavior. It's just, you don't do that, especially to a family that, whatever your view of how it happened, has been so harmed as the Kowalskis. That's got a whole new level of built-in cruelty. So
when you're making documentaries about what a shit organization you are, that's probably a time to do a little self-reflection.
I think really the way that they think is that at some point they're going to get that they're so powerful and they're so politically connected that at some point they're going in this whole process, they're going to run into somebody that they have enough influence over to mess it all up for us. I really think that's where their mind is that there's somehow, maybe they can get a presidential pardon from Biden or something. He said they're going to wake him up. There's something going on there where we've got one last slimy trick, and that one's really going to work. I think that's kind of where their head is.
And I forget how much is out of J. Hatch's own pocket.
50 million
versus insurance. 50 million cases.
Did he reduce the punitives?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, he found the punitives are fine.
Okay.
Now I get why the insurance companies don't want to chip in the 200 million or whatever it is that they're going to be left with now, but like you said, what's the chances of it being reduced further? I can't see it being any risk that I'd want to take.
Well, the judge has broad discretion. The judge cannot sit as a seventh juror. That's reversible error. The judge is to be reversed. The judge has to abuse their broad discretion, not just that the appellate court disagrees with what the judge says, but that the judge is so far out on a limb that the appellate court says we can't find any way to agree with anything this judge has said. So you've got two levels of extraordinarily broad discretion built into this now. And it would take, if people follow the law, there's no way that this case, knock on wood, could ever be reversed with that broad of a discretion over what the jury said, and then the approval by the trial court and the trial court's broad discretion to decide whether to do that or not. And so when you look at it from that point of view, there's really no sense in continuing this game on if you are dealing with things rationally in any way. But I got to tell you, I've always felt particularly because he didn't offer anything, and because they were so mealy-mouthed to, I don't know how you would even describe it. They were just so all over the place and appearing to hold things back about the insurance. They wouldn't. Florida has a statute, 627.4137, requires them to present us with a response that states all of the insurance of which they are aware, not only their own, but any other policies, the amount of that insurance, whether there are any coverage defenses, whether there are any exclusions that apply. And it has to be signed by a senior vice president of the insurance carrier, and it has to be delivered within 30 days of the date that it was first sent over. They never responded to that. We sent them another one. They never responded to that. We moved and we filed requests for production of documents. They sent us a tiny part of a policy, but didn't send us the deck page, which tells you all the limits and everything. We moved to compel. The court ordered them to produce the policy. They produced the policy, but they redacted out all the stuff that really mattered. Then in front of the court, we started talking about that, and we said, we need to know, are they considering themselves, this Vermont MCIC, are they bound by the laws of the state of Florida? They're doing business here. And are they licensed? It looks like they're licensed to be an insurance company here. So are they saying that they're not controlled by the Florida Department of Insurance for actions taken in Florida litigation or not? And Howard's response was very loosey-goosey. It was like, well, we're not sure we're bound or that we're administrated over. We're not sure that, and it was very unnerving to somebody like me who has had to deal with the London syndicates before and had gotten a huge verdict and then had to chase them in London to get the freaking payment back.
Yeah,
So,
that's who I usually deal with is the big London insurers.
yeah, they're no fun.
I feel your pain.
They're no fun. So and so I've always been concerned that they had something up their sleeve about just not paying, just saying, flipping the court and the appellate court and the judicial system, everybody just the big finger, saying, "Come and get us up here in Vermont," you know. And I've had to do that kind of stuff too. And the problem is that then you get into the home court advantage of being up there and litigating on their turf to try to get a judgment domesticated to collect it up there. So that's a whole nother thing. However, now we know where their assets are, courtesy of punitive damages. And they got a lot of real estate in Pinellas County. And so I'm not even going to screw around with those guys up there. They don't pay, I'll grab it. Should be fun. We'll rename it the Kowalski. Yeah.
Get a nice wing of the hospital named after you. Yeah. El Borate says, I'm still waiting on the IJ documents.
I know.
Aren't we all?
I don't know really what to do there. I told him, here's what happened. I mean, they did produce a privilege log, which they'd waived by the statute or by the rules of procedure. They didn't turn over a log within the 30 days required. So that had been all waived by multiple cases out there and the rule itself. But the court said, all right, send out your privilege log, and then all the things that you're not producing based on the privilege log, send them over to me to in camera. And right now we got a privilege log, but I don't think they have sent anything over to the court to actually review. Where the court's going to go, I mean, I understand, and I'm happy with Judge Carroll's decision that he'd rather write about the new trial and the juror issue and all of the directed verdict stuff. I think that that's smart and correct. The question is, after he gets finished with all that, is he going to come back and say, okay, look, to complete the record, you need to produce this stuff? But I think we pretty much know what it says. It says that they had big trouble. They were on IJ. They nearly became bankrupt, courtesy of no federal government reimbursement.
That's kind of the gist, isn't it? The IJ report says they were on IJ. That's what it is.
You know, they told the jury that they were doing great, and all of the industry entities loved them. All the inspectors and everything loved them, and they were doing perfectly and highest ratings and all this. And it turned out at the exact same time they were telling the jury that was true. In that same period, there was an immediate jeopardy notice issued by the federal government saying, we're gonna cut you off from Medicare and Medicaid patients. That would have bankrupted them.
This whole thing is just so unsavory, unnecessarily so.
It really is.
I mean, it literally does leave a bad taste in the mouth here.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to wrap up in about 10 minutes because it's getting on 2:30 a.m. here. I still got to function tomorrow, and you've done nothing but stream since yesterday morning. I appreciate this.
I got another one at 6:30 tonight.
Oh God, nice. You do have some things here. The math agrees again. It's assume $206 million, lots of numbers, some plus signs, some other 1.5 years, some division stuff. And eventually this number is coming to be $188 per 5-minute bathroom break.
That's about what it came out to be. And then I deducted $5 for a magazine. So it came out to actually the profit margin was like 183.
And Nancy Korensek says this has become a personal vendetta. It has, and oddly, it's the wrong party that should have the vendetta. It's the Vince Clortha says, Mr. Anderson, and this is a question I was actually going to ask. If you walked into a decent bar, what would you order just to take a break for the night?
I like añejo rums. I like the Caribbean dark rums. So I will I would usually get Calderwood's, except Calderwood's now is just so sweet. It's like candy. I don't like that anymore. An Appleton 25-year on the rocks is a nice. Is something for me. But I got to tell you, I'm a big wine drinker because I really try to monitor my buzz these days, and I never know when I'm going to have to snap out of it and get back to thinking. So I'm pretty much a 2 glasses of cake bread or Chalk Hill or Sonoma Cutrer guy. Those is me usually.
Now I want. Is it too late to have wine at 2:30 in the morning? Now I want some wine.
Absolutely the perfect time. It's
and juror number 1. Oh yeah. We're 14 hours ahead.
It's going to be past the yard arm for me.
Juror number 1 says Judge C ordered J Hatch top brass at mediation. Does he have the dogs are attacking the camera? Does he have that power, and why, to make sure big wigs know what's really happening?
Does he have the
mandatory
power?
Mediation?
The mandatory mediation.
Okay.
The mediation order is 2 pages long, and it has very specific requirements about how high up the execs have to be. It encourages executives from Baltimore to come down. It requires senior executives and claims people from MCIC Vermont. It requires them to be frank, forthcoming, and exercise good faith, which his statute does. And does he have the power? He has the power to hold the company in contempt, Johns Hopkins in contempt, and he has the power to hold senior executives. He can issue an order to show cause to the executives and say, appear before me at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, February 7th, or whenever it is. And if you fail to appear, I'll issue an order of contempt, issue a capias, arrest you, and bring you down here, and you can explain it then. So, yeah, he has the power to do that. And Judge Carroll, I think, is pissed off enough so that if they thumb their nose at him again for the 100th time, he may just issue that warrant. Scary, isn't it?
I hope so. All right, dog. Come on. Away from the camera. There you go. Move there, buddy. Sorry about that. Knocked us off. Ski wumpus here. There we go. Horse Welfare says, I am a victim of medical malpractice. The defense in my case utilized many unethical tactics. It is common, and most harmed patients never get justice. It meant a lot to me to see justice for Kowalski.
I'm glad. And I get Horse Welfare. I'll be done in like 5 minutes. All right. Thanks.
Yep.
I get probably 15 emails a day with stories, and it's almost like I can't read half of them because they break my heart about folks that are in the Kowalski type situation, desperately injured people through the negligence of a hospital or a doctor or inappropriate state action. And it does break my heart, and they're right. The thing you got to remember is that, and this is coming from a defense lawyer, primarily, but most of the time, almost all the time, when you see a major lawsuit, a big one, against a big company brought by an experienced, knowledgeable lawyer, it's almost a certainty that there was some wrongdoing done. And I'll tell you why. These things are so expensive and so time consuming and so stressful that this whole idea of the frivolous lawsuit is just complete horseshit. Because no rational lawyer business person is going to invest the time, effort, stress, dollars, risk to go after a company, a deep pocket, as they say, where there's nothing done wrong, where there's just, your plaintiff, your client is just a fly by night and is twisting everything, and there's no real facts underneath it. This whole perception that's been played by certain parts of our political branch, but it just doesn't happen because it's too damn expensive to take a case that's got a bunch of holes in it. So the corollary to that is the defense lawyers know that, and the risk people at the companies pretty much know that. They know a lot more, and they know a lot of times, most of the time, I would say almost all the time, that somebody really effed up within the company. So how do you defend one of those? Well, if you're good, and what they expect you to do when they hire you is to use the law to minimize the plaintiff's claims, to take out all the exaggeration of the damages, and to come up with a plausible theory of how it could be somebody else's fault, basically, right? And so a good defense lawyer will come up with a factual theory that is at least plausible about how it's not their client's fault, or at least not all their client's fault, or only a little bit their client's fault, and will do the steps necessary to discover the damages and degree of injury to take out all of the exaggeration. That's how you do it the right way. But that takes a lot of thinking, and it takes a lot of patience, and you don't get to bill as much doing that because a lot more hard thinking goes into it than just running around filing stuff. The other way to do it, particularly if you have no talent in the courtroom, is to just make life as miserable as possible for the plaintiff and their counsel. Cost them the maximum amount of money. Use all kinds of outlandish tactics. Try to invoke law and tort reform things that have nothing to do with it. Just generally make life hell for the other side. Again, on the theory that if you make things horrific enough, the other side will fold and just settle. And a great percentage of the lawyers out there on the plaintiff side know that and settle. So most cases get settled for dimes on the dollar of their true value if you took them to a jury. That's the facts of the case.
You're absolutely correct. That's reality. It's a cold reality. And
all this tort reform does is make it 3 times more expensive for the company to defend the case, because now they've got their lawyers out there and there's 50,000 hoops to jump through. And so they just made the litigation about 4 times more expensive for everybody. That's the only effect of it.
As we wrap up here, there's three more chats to get through, then we can wrap this up. Greg says, Anna Jasky, I'd like to volunteer. I'm an average citizen with a basic understanding of laws and ethics and a passion for ensuring attorneys who operate like J. Hatch are held accountable.
Well, thank you, Anna. Send me a CV, and if we have anything out in your area or we need something, we'll keep you in mind.
And Elise Lane says, can you get the report from another source? I would imagine not, unless someone walks up and says, here's the report.
Most of that stuff for hospitals is highly regulated and protected, and there's a lot of immunities and privileges against production that are built into the statutes. And so getting it from another source is difficult unless you have an insider track somewhere. And you can get it with a little bit of slightly borderline behavior, but I only do that when it's an absolute emergency.
And I think Flux has a great last question. Mr. Anderson, do you think you will ever have a case like this again, between the media and the defense being large tools, or is this a one of a kind? Is this a once in a lifetime case?
Yeah, the stars aligned for this one. I hope I never have a case like this again. Yeah, it's but the result is wonderful, but it could have gone wrong so many different ways, and it still could go wrong. But they say that trial lawyers only have X number of big trials in their life. And if you look at, for instance, I don't know if anybody remembers the old O.J. Simpson trials from the late 90s, but, you know, all except, I think it was Kardashian or no, Robert, the one guy who was basically a DUI lawyer that was on the sidelines, but still part of it. He's still on TV
Kardashian
or something. Yeah, but the rest of them all died within like 2 years, you know.
Yeah.
All of them were dead within 2 years. So I have no incentive to I don't want to use up all my trials and take myself down with it. So yeah, will I get involved in more trials? I absolutely positively will, but not to this degree. I will come in if I'm necessary for a mediation or for maybe a part of a trial here and there. Yeah, where my skills are needed. But do I want to take on something like this again? God, no.
I don't blame you.
They'd have to pay me a hell of a lot of money up front to do it. Let's put it that
up front, yeah. And to wrap us up, Here for the Truth says, great to see you here, Mr. Anderson. Legal Vice is a great creator. Oh, thanks. And thank you for all you're doing. Seriously, thank you for taking the time out. I know that it's like a huge investment of your time to stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning and wake up and do this by 9 and do it again and again and again and again. The same questions over and over again, the same stories over and over again. But we never grow tired of it. That's why we want you here. We want to get the word out. We want to spread the news of this. And on the way out, what do you want to leave us with?
Well, I'm not saying if there aren't some very, very good cases out there with lots of liability, huge damages, and a collectible defendant on the other side, then I'm not opposed to looking at them. So if you hear of any good cases, I'm always willing to look at them. And as long as they're not going to involve a 6-year jihad, I'm interested in. But, you know, it's like anything else in life. Just take your time in choosing your lawyer. And don't just go with somebody because you see them on TV, or it's even more than doctors. Lawyers can screw up your life more than about any other professional. So you've got to choose carefully. And if you find the right one, boy, stick with them, because they're damn sure hard to find. But thanks everybody for staying involved in this. And then when Take Care of Maya and Defending Maya come out, go grab them.
Can't wait for those to come. Again, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah, I'll stay in touch.
And give Jen a super special thanks too for parting with you again for 3 more hours.
Absolutely. Well, we'll talk more.
All right. Thanks, guys, for being here. Thank you so much for the support, for the generosity. Thank you so much for the interest in the trial. And mods, thank you for doing your moddy things. And everybody, just deeply, deeply appreciate you. Appreciate Greg and Jen for agreeing to do this. And we'll see you all tomorrow, which is Thursday. And every Thursday we do our review of the O.J. Simpson trial. We're in the middle of closing arguments with Johnny Cochran as we speak. So we'll see you there tomorrow for that.
All right.
Bye, everybody. Good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.